Chapter 762. After confirming Lin Yuan's identity, Li Xian knew that he had to ask someone to take out the source seed that the Li family's Li Yun Niaocan had packed. Li Xian couldn't help but feel a little upset. Li Xian couldn't refuse to take out one of the items from the packed specimen. He couldn't reject it either. Li Xian was a smart person and knew what he would have to face if he rejected it. Even if Lin Yuan didn't express his stance after he rejected it, Lan Qin wouldn't allow him to take away this batch of specimens from the royal capital's Fey Observer Guild. However, it was also because he couldn't reject it that Li Xian felt that Lin Yuan was snatching something from the Li family's Li Yun Niao Kansas. At that moment, Lin Yuan and Long Tao had finished catching up. After catching up, Lin Yuan quickly walked over to Li Xian. At the same time, he was thinking about what he should use to exchange for the source seed from Li Xian. Lin Yuan wasn't someone who would bully others with his power. After becoming the Moon Empress disciple, Lin Yuan had been relying on his own efforts to increase his strength and develop his faction, Sky City. However, while increasing his strength and developing his faction, Lin Yuan had been hiding his identity as the Moon Empress disciple. If it wasn't to obtain the source seed that was crucial for Red Thorn's evolution, Lin Yuan wouldn't have thought of using his identity as the Moon Empress disciple. When Lin Yuan had just become a spirit chi professional and logged into Star Web, he had been 1.78 meters tall. Later on, he had grown to 1.79 meters. During the new year, Lin Yuan had logged into Star Web to fight in the Celestial Stairway duels and also updated his identity card. After updating his identity card, Lin Yuan realized that he had unknowingly grown to 1.80 meters tall. Li Xian was 1.88 meters tall and was much taller than Lin Yuan. However, when Li Xian saw Lin Yuan walking toward him, he didn't know why he felt a pressure in his heart. At that moment, Li Xian saw the youth stop in front of him and shake his hand. In an instant, a pot of strange plants appeared in the youth's hand. The strange plant in the pot had many small golden beans growing on it. The small golden beans were golden and had several pink embroideries on them. They looked soft, moist, and cute. When Lin Yuan took out this strange golden plant, the pupils of the Class 3 Creation Master Long Tao and the Class 5 Fey Observer, Grandmaster Lan Qin, shrank. Li Xian wasn't a Creation Master or a Fey Observer, so he didn't know what this strange plant with golden beans was. However, at this moment, Li Xian heard the gentle and refreshing voice of the young man before him. "I'm really sorry that I need to pick one of the things you packed. However, the source seed is very important to me. This is a golden lotus brocade plant that evolved from a flower brocade pearl. The effect of each leaf of the golden lotus brocade plant is 1.3 times that of a flower brocade pearl leaf. At the same time, the golden lotus brocade beads can increase a Creation Master's success rate in concocting the spirit fluid and increase the fusion rate of the spiritual ingredients in the spirit fluid. It is also very gentle and can be used with other spiritual ingredients that can assist Creation Masters, including the flower brocade pearl. I hope to use this pot of golden lotus brocade to exchange for the source seed in your package. Is that possible?" Li Xian said subconsciously when he heard that. "No problem. I will go and find out which Fey storage box the source seed is in." Li Xian had always abhorred evil and was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. If Lin Yuan had really used his power to forcefully rob him, even if Li Xian had endured it and not acted up, he would probably remember it for life. However, Lin Yuan could obviously use his power to oppress him, but he had actually explained the reason and apologized. His final sentence, "Is that possible?" had turned the act of forcefully robbing into asking the Li family's Li Yun Avian Can for help. Not only did this protect the Li family's Li Yun Avian Can's reputation, but it was also the same as giving Li Yun and the Li family's Li Yun Avian Can face by taking the initiative to ask for help as the Moon Empress disciple. Li Xian was naturally willing to help the Moon Empress disciple. Li Xian didn't know what this golden lotus brocade plant was. putting aside the fact that the golden lotus brocade plant was 1.3 times better than the flower brocade pearl and could increase the fusion rate of spiritual ingredients. Just the fact that the golden lotus brocade plant could be used with other spiritual ingredients that could assist creation masters was enough for Li Xian to exchange for this pot of golden lotus brocade plant at all costs. As a pinnacle faction, the Li family's Li Yun avian can needed to use a lot of creation master resources in the process of nurturing flying phase. In particular, the Li family's Li Yun avian can had to pour in high-class creation masters resources to nurture precious flying phase. High-class creation masters had always been the most precious resources in a faction, and every high-class creation master's resources would be arranged to be spent on critical matters. The fact that the golden lotus brocade plant could be used with spiritual ingredients that had auxiliary functions for other creation masters was equivalent to reducing the difficulty for high-class creation masters to concoct spirit fluids. It imperceptibly increased the speed at which high-class creation masters concocted spirit fluids. In comparison, the golden lotus brocade plant was equivalent to adding high-class creation master resources for the Li family's Li Yun avian. Kansas Lin Yuan was treating a high-class creation master as a few resources. He looked at Li Xian, who was helping him look at the details on the gold phase storage box and search for the source seed, and revealed a trace of a smile on his face. As someone who had lived 2 lives, Lin Yuan was naturally not a young kid who would easily become enemies with others in terms of the ways of the world. After running the private faction Sky City for so long, Lin Yuan was naturally very clear about the importance of connections to a faction. Therefore, Lin Yuan paid great attention to the accumulation of connections. Instead of directly snatching the source seed from Li Xian's hands with his identity, it was better to use another method to befriend Li Xian. It was to increase Sky City's network of connections. Even so, Lin Yuan had not planned to take out the golden lotus brocade plant to exchange for the source seed from Li Xian. It was just that when he had given Master Hong Shen the golden lotus brocade plant to use to concoct the spirit fluid, Master Hong Shen had accidentally discovered that the golden lotus brocade plant could be used with other spiritual ingredients that could assist creation masters. Such an accidental discovery had infinitely raised the golden lotus brocade plant's value and made Lin Yuan need to be more cautious in the future transactions of the golden lotus brocade plant. It could be said that the golden lotus brocade plant was now a kind of foundation-class resource that was greatly helpful to the faction's creation masters. If a large number of golden lotus brocade plant flowed into the factions, it would even affect the situation and direction between the major factions. Even if Lin Yuan traded out resources like the golden lotus brocade plant, he would not let it flow into the factions that were hostile to him. In fact, things like the golden lotus brocade plant that could affect a faction's creation master's resources were used appropriately, and it was also a perfect blow to the hostile faction. The first time was even more. It's a new month. Sob sob sob, please support the button. Vote for monthly votes. Button will refuel and update. Button will stay up all night writing. 1:51 a.m. End of this chapter. Chapter 763. Just like the Miao family's Beast Creation Institution, which mainly focused on creation master resources, the golden lotus brocade beads would have a huge impact on it. By trading the golden lotus brocade pearls with the Miao family's Beast Creation Institution, it was equivalent to increasing the creation master resources of the Miao family's Beast Creation Institution exponentially. On the contrary, Lin Yuan refused to trade the golden lotus brocade pearls with the Miao family. Instead, he traded them with other hostile factions with the same functions as the Miao family. This was equivalent to increasing the strength of the Miao family's enemies. It had imperceptibly weakened the creation master resources that the Miao family was proud of. When something like the golden lotus brocade bead that could strengthen a faction's creation master's foundation appeared out of nowhere, those who had not personally used the golden lotus brocade bead would definitely doubt its authenticity. Therefore, there must be witnesses with sufficient status to witness the effects of the golden lotus brocade. The Royal Capital's Fey Observer Guild's president, Lan Qin, the Coiling Dragon Valley's Long Tao, and the Li Cloud Bird Niche's Li Xian were undoubtedly powerful witnesses for the Golden Lotus Pearl. They could help Lin Yuan advertise the Golden Lotus Pearl. In fact, Lin Yuan did not intend to take out the Golden Lotus brocade bead now. After all, he had only cultivated 10 pots of child ramets with the Golden Lotus brocade pearl brocade Ortet's exclusive skill. However, after seeing Long Tao and Li Xian, Lin Yuan wanted to try and see if he could use the Golden Lotus brocade beads to attract them. He asked Long Tao and Li Xian to take the initiative to trade the Golden Lotus brocade beads with him. Then, he could use the Golden Lotus brocade beads to exchange for some Law Origin crystals. Otherwise, the Law Source crystals in his hands were far from enough to elevate a Myth 3 Dark Death Law rune to the level of the Creation Dark Death world. In essence, he was not afraid of the Golden Lotus brocade beads flowing into other factions. Although the Golden Lotus brocade beads in Lin Yuan's hand was alive, it could not be considered a proper fey. It was just a part of the plant that was separated by the Golden Lotus brocade beads' Mother Ramet's exclusive skill. If he had to define the Golden Lotus brocade beads that were nurtured through the Broodmother's exclusive skill, he felt that it was a spiritual ingredient that could grow continuously. Therefore, it did not matter if anyone studied the Golden Lotus brocade pearls child ramets that had flowed out of Lin Yuan's hands. As long as the Mother Ramets were in Lin Yuan's hands, he could firmly control the market for the Golden Lotus brocade pearls. To achieve an absolute monopoly on the Golden Lotus brocade market. Lin Yuan did not know how many Feys and Source-type lifeforms Li Xian had packed from the Royal Capital's Fey Observer Guild as specimens. Li Xian's actions were very fast. In just a few minutes, he had checked the details on 8 gold Fey storage boxes. However, he still couldn't find the source seed that Lin Yuan needed. During this process, Lin Yuan had not been idle. As early as when Li Xian had started to check the Fey storage box, Lin Yuan had used his peripheral vision to observe Long Tao and Master Lan Qin's expressions. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw Long Tao walking toward him and staring at the Golden Lotus brocade bead in his hand. Lin Yuan simply turned around and handed the Golden Lotus brocade bead to Long Tao. If you want to see it, why don't you hold it in your hand and examine it carefully? Or you can just pluck off a leaf of the Golden Lotus brocade pearl to mix with the spirit liquid and test its effects. When Li Xian saw that Lin Yuan had handed the Golden Lotus brocade beads to Long Tao, he hurriedly instructed the 5 staff members who were moving the new gold face storage box out. The 5 of you, don't be in a hurry to move the items out. Help me find the source seed in these spirit storage boxes first. After saying that, Li Xian quickly walked to Lin Yuan's side and looked at Long Tao with a vigilant gaze as though he was afraid that Long Tao would snatch this pot of Golden Lotus brocade pearls from him. Li Xian might not be a creation master or a Fey observer, so he couldn't identify the effects of the Golden Lotus brocade beads. However, he did not doubt the effects of the Golden Lotus brocade beads. After all, this pot of Golden Lotus brocade pearls was taken out by the Moon Empress disciple. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's suggestion, Lan Qin said, "That's right. I'll find an empty observation room for you. It'll be more convenient for you to concoct the Golden Lotus brocade beads." Long Tao shook his head and said, "No need to trouble Grandmaster Lan Qin." After speaking, Long Tao took 2 filtered gold Fey storage boxes and stacked them together to form a simple workbench. Then, Long Tao took out 4 spiritual materials. They were Silver Tear Dragon Beast Blood, Silver Tear Dragon Beast Bone Powder, Quenched Hard Scale, and a small piece of gold Scorching Calamus Leaf. He was preparing to concoct the spirit fluid on the spot. Everyone knew that dragon species Feys, be it dinosaur species Feys or flood dragons, could spit out dragon breath. Upon seeing the spiritual materials Long Tao took out, Lin Yuan immediately knew that Long Tao was preparing to concoct a Class 2 elixir that could stimulate the dinosaur species Fey's dragon breath talent, the infant dragon elixir. Creation masters had always required a very quiet environment when concocting spirit fluids. Long Tao must be very confident in concocting the Class 2 spirit fluid under everyone's watch. This also showed that Long Tao was very confident in his strength as a creation master. After Long Tao divided and mixed the 4 spiritual materials, he took out a drop of purplish gold sticky blood and dripped it into the half-concocted spirit fluid. After Long Tao took out this drop of purplish gold sticky blood, the Fey Observer Guild storeroom was filled with a thick stench of blood. This thick stench of blood also had a unique stench that belonged to dinosaur species Feys. When Lin Yuan had been understanding the Radiance Federation's top factions, he had paid special attention to the Long family's coiled Dragon Valley because he knew Long Tao. He had also learned that the Long family's coiled Dragon Valley had a unique Fey called the Pseudoskeletal Dragon. In fact, the Long family's coiled Dragon Valley's creation master resources were almost on par with the Miao family's beast creation institution. The Pseudoskeletal Dragon was able to suppress the Miao family in terms of creation master resources because of the Pseudoskeletal Dragon. The Pseudoskeletal Dragon was a dragon that loved to eat and had abnormally terrifying looks. Its entire body was covered with a layer of exoskeleton, which was almost entirely made of flexible cartilage. Even if one killed the Pseudoskeletal Dragon and used razor to clean it, they would never be able to dig out 25 caddies of meat from its body. However, having a lot of bones wasn't a disadvantage for the Pseudoskeletal Dragon. Instead, it was a great advantage. The purplish gold bone marrow in the Pseudoskeletal Dragon's bones could increase the success rate of concocting spirit fluids and greatly reduce the time required for concocting spirit fluids. After a long time, Long Tao plucked a leaf that was shaped like a golden pearl from the golden lotus brocade pearl while Li Xian's eyelids were twitching wildly. Just as Long Tao was about to carefully squeeze the golden lotus brocade pearl's juice into the spirit fluid, he realized that before he could exert any force, the leaf had been separated from the plant and turned into water. The water leaf turned into a small lump of sticky gelatinous substance that fell into the spirit fluid. Long Tao used his spiritual energy to stir quickly, and soon, the infant dragon elixir was concocted. Long Tao looked at the infant dragon elixir that was concocted in front of him. Although he was forcefully suppressing the fluctuations in his eyes were still flickering continuously. The second one, end of this chapter. Chapter 764. Long Tao had concocted the infant dragon potion countless times in the past, and the best spiritual ingredient fusion rate he had ever concocted was only 62%. Even if Long Tao's basic skills were solid, he would still be slightly affected by the concoction of the infant dragon potion in front of everyone's eyes. Long Tao felt that it would be great if he could achieve a 55% fusion rate with the spiritual ingredients of the infant dragon potion. But this time, the fusion rate exceeded Long Tao's expectations. It reached 72%. Long Tao naturally wouldn't be conceited enough to think that his creation master strength had increased. Furthermore, the pseudoskeletal royal dragon's bone marrow could only speed up the concoction speed and not increase the fusion rate of the spiritual ingredients. In other words, it was all thanks to the golden lotus pearls that the infant dragon potion's assimilation rate had reached 72%, which was 10% higher than his previous attempt. When Long Tao was mixing the spiritual fluid, he also timed it. This time, it took a total of 21 minutes to mix the spiritual fluid. Compared to the 24 minutes required to concoct the baby dragon potion with the bone marrow of the pseudo-humorous dragon, it was 3 minutes longer. After Long Tao put the golden lotus brocade bead into practice, the value of the golden lotus brocade bead rose infinitely in Long Tao's heart. In Long Tao's opinion, the golden lotus brocade bead was a creation master's cardinal treasure. Long Tao looked at the golden lotus brocade bead for a long while before moving his eyes away. She handed the golden lotus brocade beads to Lin Yuan and said, "You're welcome. There's no way to accurately verify the success rate of the spirit elixir just by mixing it once. In terms of time, using it together with the bone marrow of the pseudoskeletal royal dragon can increase the time required by 3 minutes or more. Based on the overall concoction time of the spirit liquid, I can infer that the golden lotus brocade is at least 13% faster than the spirit liquid. The fusion rate with the spirit materials has also increased by at least 10%. The more Long Tao said, the more he sighed at the golden lotus brocade beads. However, Long Tao had his own bottom line and integrity. Since Long Tao and Li Xian were friends, he wouldn't snatch the golden lotus brocade beads that Li Xian had agreed to trade with. Hearing Long Tao's experiment results, Master Lan Qin's eyes were full of amazement. Li Xian's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Especially when he heard Long Tao say that the fusion rate of spiritual materials would increase by at least 10%, Li Xian couldn't help but clap his hands, the corners of his mouth almost reaching his ears. Li Xian was a sentimental person. After sensing Lin Yuan's attitude, the displeasure in his heart had completely dissipated. He even had a good impression of Lin Yuan. Not using one's power to oppress others when one was at a high position was an extremely rare and precious quality among the disciples of top powers. Moreover, Lin Yuan's identity was like the moon in the clouds, far from what the top faction disciples could compare to. Now that Li Xian knew the effects of the golden lotus brocade beads, he started to thank Lin Yuan instead. Li Xian knew very well that the golden lotus brocade beads wouldn't be very effective in the hands of a Class 3 creation master like Long Tao. However, if it was placed in the hands of a pinnacle class for creation master like Li Yun Avian Niche, the efficiency would increase by at least 10% when enhancing bronze/epic phase or using high-purity spirit chi to induce phase to mutate. This was simply a huge gift from the heavens. The more Li Xian looked at Lin Yuan, the more he found him pleasing to the eye. "Bring me along when you two go to dinner tonight." Long Tao had originally planned to bring Li Xian along for dinner. After all, he had come to the royal capital's Fey Observer Guild to accompany Li Xian. However, now that Li Xian had taken the initiative to join the dinner, he didn't want to introduce himself but to take the initiative to get to know Lin Yuan. Long Tao didn't say anything and looked at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan naturally wouldn't object to this. After seeing Li Xian, Lin Yuan already wanted to befriend him. "No problem, I don't have any objections. It's just that I don't know what delicious places there are in the capital. If we go, we'll have to follow Brother Long Tao." After saying that, Lin Yuan extended his hand toward Li Xian and took the initiative to introduce himself. "Hello, I'm Lin Yuan." Li Xian felt that Lin Yuan's personality was simply too good. Li Xian hurriedly smiled and used both hands to hold Lin Yuan's hand while introducing himself. "I'm Li Xian, Che Gan Xian." Since I came uninvited, then let me treat you to dinner tonight." At that moment, the Class 5 Fey Observer Elder, who had accompanied Long Tao and Li Xian, walked over while holding an abnormally ordinary long vine and said, "Don't worry. This should be the source seed." While speaking, the old man revealed a strange expression and secretly glanced at the golden lotus brocade bead in Lin Yuan's hand. The elder simply could not understand why Lin Yuan would be willing to use a treasure like the golden lotus brocade pearl to exchange for a source seed that even took up space in the Fey storage box. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he saw the vine that was formed from the source seed in the elder's hand. Lin Yuan quickly stored the vines that the source seed had developed into the amber button-shaped diamond Fey storage box. Even though Red Thorn was still in a deep slumber within the spirit lock spatial zone, when it sensed the final source seed, it was still able to sense the source seed. Red Thorn, who was in deep sleep, transmitted an abnormal signal of desire. This feeling of desire was exactly the same as when Red Thorn had devoured the second source seed that had yet to germinate. When he sensed the signal from Red Thorn, he knew that he was in the spirit lock spatial zone. It seemed like the 3 source seeds that he had previously discovered in the dimensional rift were not 3 separate source-type lifeforms but one entity. With the vine that was formed from the source seed in his hand, Lin Yuan's heart was finally at ease. Afterward, Lin Yuan just had to feed the vine to red thorn and wait for it to complete its transformation. After obtaining the source seed, Lin Yuan handed the golden lotus brocade pearl to Li Xian. At that moment, Lin Yuan had completed his task at the Fey Observer Guild. Lin Yuan looked at Master Lan Qin, who was staring at the golden lotus brocade pearl and hesitating to speak. Lin Yuan's eyes flickered as he asked, "Master Lan Qin, do you want to observe the golden lotus brocade pearl?" Master Lan Qin nodded and replied, "I do have such a plan. I do have such a plan. I was thinking of getting 2 leaves of the golden lotus pearl from Xiaofan. However, the leaves will quickly melt after leaving the golden lotus brocade pearl, and they can't be preserved." Master Lan Qin only took a few glances at the golden lotus brocade pearl and noticed its weakness. Lin Yuan was willing to let the golden lotus brocade pearl flow into the hands of other factions because he had to ensure that the golden lotus brocade pearl would not change hands with other factions. However, the golden lotus brocade pearl was a resource that was equivalent to a creation master's resources, so no faction would be willing to trade it away. However, as more and more golden lotus brocade pearls flowed out of Lin Yuan's hands, it was very likely that some factions would want to make an issue out of the golden lotus brocade pearl's leaves. The characteristics of the golden lotus brocade pearl's leaves turning into water could effectively prevent this. Moreover, the sticky juice that turned into water would lose its activity within 2 minutes. Therefore, the method of exchanging the juice would be fundamentally rejected. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan was not afraid of going against his original intention of letting the golden lotus brocade pearl flow out of his hands. However, Lin Yuan, who had always liked 1,000 layers of tricks, naturally would not only have 2 layers of tricks for the golden lotus brocade pearl. Lin Yuan still had a 3rd layer of tricks waiting for him, but it required a prerequisite. The 3rd layer. Do you want to see the game between factions in detail or quickly go to the Divine Wood Federation to train? It was up to the readers to decide whether the Celestial Council should focus on writing. Button did not have a draft and was written on the spot. He wanted to hear everyone's opinions and adjust the outline. End of this chapter. Chapter 765. Under Master Lan Qin's somewhat regretful gaze, Lin Yuan's hand sank. Another pot of golden lotus pearls appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. This scene stunned everyone present. Then, Long Tao's and Li Xian's minds suddenly became active. Lin Yuan said as he handed the golden lotus pearl to Lan Qin. "Grandmaster Lan Qin, I still have some golden lotus pearls. If you want to study them, you can study the one in my hand." Grandmaster Lan Qin quickly waved her hand and said, "Your Highness, you can't do that." Lan Qin had just roughly observed the golden lotus brocade beads. As a plant, the structure of the golden lotus pearl was not complicated, but it looked quite strange from the outside. After observing for a while, Lan Qin did not dare to make an accurate conclusion about the species of the golden lotus brocade. He only felt that the golden lotus brocade bead should be a kind of bead-like fleshy fey. In fact, Master Lan Qin was not to be blamed. Lin Yuan had also been shocked and he had seen the child ramets from the golden lotus brocade pearl. The child ramets of the golden lotus brocade beads belonged to the typical situation of, the child born by the mother doesn't look like the mother. In Lin Yuan's opinion, this was a good thing. The golden lotus brocade beads' mother ramets were very easy to associate with the flower brocade beads, but the appearance of the golden lotus brocade beads' child ramets was very different from the flower brocade beads. On the contrary, it looked somewhat similar to the flower brocade pearl before it mutated. As a healing-type fey that was despised by people, it was hard for people to associate it with the precious golden lotus brocade beads. If he summoned Genius and Chimey and told others that Genius was 100 questions beast and Chimey was a sound bird, they would not be able to do so. He was afraid that others would immediately think of him as a lunatic. Lin Yuan said when he saw that Lan Xian did not accept the golden lotus brocade beads. Just now, Grandmaster Lan Qin gave me a set of information. This golden lotus brocade bead is my gift to Grandmaster Lan Qin. Master Lan Qin originally had a calm and dignified personality. Now that she was middle-aged and engaged in Fey observation work, she had become even more steady. However, after hearing Lin Yuan's words, he could not help but roll his eyes. His own information was something that people would despise even if it cost 5,000 federal coins. However, upon seeing Lin Yuan's sincere eyes, Master Lan Qin smiled and reached out to take the golden lotus brocade bead from Lin Yuan's hand. Then leave this golden lotus brocade with me to study for a month. After a month, you can take the golden lotus brocade back. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan did not refuse, as he knew that if he did, Master Lan Qin would not even accept this month's time. Alright, but I won't return the knowledge and the information that Master Lan Qin gave me. Grandmaster Lan Qin was slightly startled. Then, she looked at Lin Yuan with a slightly different gaze. Her eyes were increasingly gentle and kind. I'll keep my word. Your Highness, please don't return any of it to me. Lan Qin sent Lin Yuan, Long Tao, and Li Xian to the Fey Observer Guild's hall. When she saw Lin Yuan's departing figure, Lan Qin could not help but sigh. What an adorable child. After exiting the Fey Observer Association, Li Xian coolly snapped his fingers, and a Fey carriage appeared in front of him. The moment the Fey carriage was summoned, the people coming and going at the entrance of the Fey Observer Association couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. For a moment, exclamations and envious voices lingered. In fact, this was also Lin Yuan's first time seeing a Fey carriage. Lin Yuan saw 6 handsome and gorgeous avian Feys in front of the Fey carriage. These 6 avian Feys had a kind of noble and graceful pressure, which was very similar to the dragon species Fey's pressure. However, compared to the dragon species Fey's pressure, these 6 avian Feys' pressure was more agile and elegant. It was not as aggressive as the dragon species Fey's pressure. Lin Yuan subconsciously used true data to check these 6 beautiful avian Feys. At a glance, Lin Yuan found that the 6 avian Feys in front of the Fey carriage that Li Xian had summoned were all pure-blooded One Phoenix species Feys. These 6 pure-blooded One Phoenix species Feys had already reached an extremely thorough level in terms of bloodline stimulation. If they had a fortuitous encounter in the future, they were likely to successfully evolve into a main Phoenix species Fey that was equivalent to a main dragon species Fey. Li Xian walked forward and stroked the rosy red phoenixes one by one. After exchanging a few words with them, he said to Lin Yuan and Long Tao, "Brothers, get in the carriage. Brothers, get in the car. This place isn't far from Muxiangju, it'll be faster if we take the 6 Phoenix Rosy Phoenix carriage." Upon hearing that, Long Tao rolled his eyes at Li Xian and replied to Lin Yuan. "Lin Yuan, if it wasn't for you, Li Xian wouldn't have let me sit in his 6 Phoenixes Rosy Phoenix carriage even if you beat him to death. This 6 Phoenixes Phoenix chariot is Li Xian's treasure." Hearing that, Li Xian seemed to have acquiesced to Long Tao's words and said half-jokingly, "Of course, if it were you, I wouldn't have summoned the 6 Phoenix Crimson Phoenix carriage. At most, I can order a divine travel black swallow for you." Long Tao snorted when he heard that. "You should take the divine travel black swallow. Who knows, it might even cure your old hemorrhoids." When Lin Yuan heard Long Tao and Li Xian's conversation, he immediately nodded in agreement. It seemed like everyone felt uncomfortable with the divine travel black swallow. However, how did Long Tao know that Li Xian had hemorrhoids? Lin Yuan could not help but suddenly have a lot of small question marks. Lin Yuan was originally not keen on Fey carriages, but after seeing this one pulled by 6 rosy red phoenixes, he decided that he must get Hu Quan to start building a Fey carriage after he returned. This was because a Fey carriage's coolness was not something that a simple mount could compare to. At that moment, Lin Yuan finally knew why men liked carriages. The 6 Crimson Phoenix carriage's exterior decoration matched with the 6 Fays pulling the carriage itself exuded a sense of beauty. After Lin Yuan entered the 6 Crimson Phoenix carriage's cabin, he found that the interior was far more spacious than it looked from the outside. The interior of the 6 Crimson Phoenix carriage was laid with down blankets woven from the feathers of various flying fays. On the long table in the middle of the carriage were a few jade utensils with rosy red phoenixes flapping their wings and wanting to fly. There were all kinds of spirit fruits in the utensils, and the aroma of the spirit fruits spread in the carriage. When the 6 Crimson Phoenix carriage traveled in the sky, it was simply a kind of comfortable enjoyment. As the haze flowed, Lin Yuan felt as though he was in a fairyland of lights. Sunset clouds fly together, lonely ducks cry together. Long Tao and Li Xian, who were on the 6 Crimson Phoenix carriage, looked at Lin Yuan with a hesitant expression. They obviously wanted to say something but did not know how to say it. Long Tao and Li Xian noticed each other's expressions and immediately understood what the other party was thinking. The first one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 766. Previously, Long Tao did not snatch the golden lotus pearl out of friendship. Now that Long Tao knew that Lin Yuan still had some golden lotus brocade pearls, he naturally had to fight for them. If the Long family could obtain more golden lotus brocade pearls in the coiled Dragon Valley, it was very likely that the Long family would rise to another level, thus suppressing the other top powers with the same functions as the Long family. Although Lin Yuan was admiring the 6 Rosy Phoenix chariot's interior decorations and the beautiful scenery amidst the multicolored light, he couldn't help but sigh. However, at the same time, he was also calculating in his heart and waiting for the precondition of the golden lotus brocade bead's 3rd level to be triggered. Lin Yuan had long noticed Long Tao and Li Xian's hesitant gazes at him. Lin Yuan's fingers tapped on the long table in the 6 Rosy Phoenix carriage. It seemed like he would have a great harvest from the meal later. Since it was a trade with 2 peak forces. In that case, there would definitely be a huge flow of resources, and Lin Yuan could obtain the resources he lacked from the huge flow of resources. It was true that Lin Yuan had befriended Long Tao and Li Xian, but he would not make any concessions in this kind of transaction between factions. At that moment, a pair of bony hands suddenly appeared in front of him, and they were holding a bright red lychee. Lin Yuan took a look and realized that the owner of these hands was Long Tao. Lin Yuan didn't stand on ceremony and took the lychees that Long Tao handed over. When Long Tao saw Lin Yuan take the lychees, he also reached out to take a pair from the fruit platter and took a bite. Although Muxiang House is a buffet, there's basically no vegetarian food left. Most of the food styles are barbecued and fried. Eat some fruits to fill your stomach first so that you won't feel greasy later. When Long Tao spoke, he could not help but think of Shi Su and Zhao Xiaochun. Now, Shi Su had basically become a mangy dog. He would go to Dragon Gate Club whenever he had nothing to do. The internal members of Rhine Club and Dragon Gate Club knew that Shi Su was trying to flirt with Zhao Xiaochun. However, the S tournament was about to enter the semi-finals, and the matchups for the semi-finals teams had not yet been determined. No one knew if the Dragon Gate Guild Club would join forces with the Rhine Guild Club. In such a period of time, even the actions of the 2 club guilds' reserve team members would cause quite a commotion on Star Web. What's more, it was a main star player who was making such an eye-catching move. Long Tao contacted Liang, the captain of the Rhine Club's main force, several times, but Liang didn't care at all. What confused Long Tao was that not only did Liang not care, but he also madly accepted the interview as if he was crazy. He wasn't very good looking to begin with, but now he had grown a beard. No one knew what he was thinking about. On the other hand, as the leader of the Dragon Gate Guild Club, he had to participate in some activities to clear up the rumors about Shi Su because of Li Ang's frequent interviews. At the mention of the rumors, Long Tao's heart was even angrier. The Dragon Gate Guild Club was indeed full of reckless people, and they also had the intention of looking for a backup. If Shi Shuzhen could join the Dragon Gate Guild Club, Long Tao would definitely agree. However, Shi Su wasn't here to join the Dragon Gate Guild Club. Instead, he was here to settle his marriage. During this period of time, Zhao Xiaochun didn't know what had kicked her in the head. She actually didn't like eating pork trotters anymore. Instead, she liked eating Shi Su. Long Tao knew that Muxiang House was originally specially opened by Shi Su for Zhao Xiaochun, but he wouldn't go so far as to change the taste and dishes of Muxiang House to Zhao Xiaochun's liking just to flirt with her. Shi Su was simply a bootlicker among bootlickers. Serves you right for not having money to woo Zhao Xiaochun. Long Tao madly cursed Shi Su and Zhao Xiaochun in his heart, but his expression didn't change at all. When Lin Yuan heard Long Tao's words, his eyelids twitched. He couldn't help but feel that this Muxiang House's owner had good taste. Lin Yuan didn't like to eat vegetables at all. As long as he had meat to eat, he wouldn't even think about not eating vegetables for a year. Moreover, Lin Yuan did prefer to eat fried food among steaming, boiling, frying, and stewing. When Li Xian saw Long Tao pass a red lychee to Lin Yuan, he first looked at Long Tao in surprise before rolling his eyes to the back of his head. Li Xian had thought that Long Tao and Lin Yuan knew each other, but he didn't know why Long Tao got along with Lin Yuan so well. It was as though the two of them were already old friends. However, familiarity was just familiarity. Li Xian and Long Tao were childhood friends, and Long Tao was also familiar with him. This meant that Long Tao was already prepared to talk to Lin Yuan about the golden lotus brocade pearls. Although Li Xian already had a pot of golden lotus brocade pearls, it was naturally better to have more good things like the golden lotus brocade pearls that could enhance a faction's creation master foundation. The Li family's class for creation masters might not be comparable to the Long family's, but there were 9 of them. Among them, there were as many as 3 pinnacle class for creation masters. Li Xian felt that even if he couldn't trade for 9 pots of golden lotus brocade pearls from Lin Yuan, it would still be good to trade for 3 pots. Li Xian wasn't like Long Tao, who was the only direct descendant of the Coiled Dragon Valley's younger generation. He was destined to control the entire Coiled Dragon Valley in the future. Li Xian had a lot of competition with his peers in Li Yun Bird Cage. If he could bring back a few more pots of golden lotus brocade pearls this time, then Li Xian would be more valued by the family's elders in Li Yun Bird Cage. In Li Xian's opinion, compared to bringing back the golden lotus brocade pearls to the Li family's Li Yun Bird Cage, building a relationship with Lin Yuan might be more important in the eyes of Li Yun Bird Cage's elders. Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple, and this identity alone was enough for the family's elders to view him in a different light. When Lin Yuan was developing Sky City, he realized the importance of connections. Li Xian had been living in a pinnacle faction since he was young, so he naturally knew better. Li Xian decided to ask Lin Yuan for the golden lotus brocade pearls before Long Tao. However, in order to make a deal, he naturally had to take out the corresponding chips. Since he was the first to propose a deal, it naturally wouldn't be good to ask what Lin Yuan wanted. Moreover, as the Moon Empress disciple, Lin Yuan could easily get the stars in the sky if he wanted them. All of a sudden, Li Xian thought of something he had just obtained. However, Li Xian was really reluctant to take out such an item to exchange for the golden lotus brocade pearls. However, when Li Xian thought of the golden lotus brocade pearls' effects on creation masters and his future status in the Li family, he gritted his teeth. A sparkling and translucent light pink rhombus-shaped gem appeared in Li Xian's hand. After Li Xian summoned the light pink rhombus-shaped gem, it immediately jumped gently with a rhythm like a young life's constantly beating heart. The second one was even more. It was a source-type life form that was very important for the future training. Roar. Everyone can guess. End of this chapter. Chapter 767. Under normal circumstances, there were very few spiritual ingredients and fays that could emit a pink halo. Only some plant species phase flowers could emit a pink halo. Due to the haze constantly enveloping the fey carriage, Lin Yuan really did not notice the pink halo that suddenly appeared in Li Xian's hand. However, the sudden heartbeat attracted his attention. At a glance, he realized that the heartbeat actually came from a pink diamond-shaped gem. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check the pink diamond-shaped gem in Li Xian's hand. However, after checking it, he could no longer shift his gaze away from this pink diamond-shaped gem. At that moment, Li Xian spoke. "Lin Yuan, take a look at this source-type fairy heart." After saying that, Li Xian handed the pink, diamond-shaped, demon's heart to Lin Yuan. At first, when Li Xian took out the fairy's heart, he felt a little heartache. However, after making his decision, Li Xian immediately became decisive. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan had accepted the demon's heart, Li Xian did not go into detail about its functions. Since Lin Yuan was accepted as a disciple by the Moon Empress, he must be a creation master and could easily see the function and preciousness of the demon's heart. When Lin Yuan saw the demon's heart, he had already decided that he had to trade it. He had never revealed his law crystal to anyone outside the return from faraway mansion. However, if Li Xian wanted to use the fairy's heart to exchange for the law crystals that contained pure power of law, Lin Yuan would agree without hesitation. The demon's heart's function was simply too important to him. A source-type lifeform like the fairy's heart was very different from normal source-type lifeforms. In general, source-type lifeforms would contract with spirit qi professionals. The special ones would also rely on parasitizing other phase or source-type lifeforms to survive, like the acid corrosion queen bee. But that was not the case with the fairy's heart. The demon's heart's information under True Data showed that it could fuse with any fey. After the fusion, it would be like a consumable, allowing this fey to transform into a fairy source-type life form. However, the demon spirit's heart wouldn't truly vanish after being used. Instead, it would replace the original fey's spirit and soul without changing the fey's original functions and evolution potential. After entering the main fey object for a period of time, a fairy would hatch from the original fey object. This little fairy would treat the first person she saw when she opened her eyes as her faith, her everything. In his opinion, the combination of the demon spirit's heart and phase was like the possession in his previous life's fantasy novels. The fey that had been possessed by the heart of the fairy might have transformed into a fairy, but it had lost its original spirit and soul. Therefore, he could not use the demon's heart on a contracted fey. If Lin Yuan used the fairy's heart on his contracted fey, even if his contracted fey transformed into a fairy, its soul and spirit would ultimately change. They were no longer Lin Yuan's companions. In fact, even if Lin Yuan wanted to fuse the demon's heart with his contracted fey, it was not quite possible. According to the demon's heart's ability, it could transform all the fays in the world into fairy source-type lifeforms. However, this was not the case. There were very harsh conditions for the demon's heart to possess. Or rather, it was probability. Firstly, the demon's heart could only fuse with fays and not source-type lifeforms. Secondly, the demon's heart's grade could not be higher than silver. Thirdly, the demon's heart's spiritual energy and soul strength were not strong. If it fused with a fey with its own consciousness, it would immediately be resisted by the host's original spiritual energy and soul. This would cause the original fey's spiritual energy and soul to perish together with the demon's heart, resulting in a situation where one corpse and two lives would be lost. The higher the fey's intelligence, the higher the failure rate of the demon's heart transforming the fey into a fairy source-type life form. Therefore, after a comparison, only a plant fey was the safest. After all, plant fays at silver had abnormally weak spiritual energy and soul that were close to nothing. As long as the demon's heart was used to fuse with a plant fey below silver, it could basically achieve a 100% success rate without external interference. Furthermore, the demon's heart's master recognition method was simple and reliable. It was simply too convenient. The demon's heart's possession of a plant fey and allowed it to transform into a fairy source-type life form was equivalent to bestowing the plant fey with intelligence and the ability to move freely. It allowed the plant fey's two most lacking aspects to be filled. With the demon's heart's intelligence, the plant fey could no longer rely on instinct and could perfectly execute the spirit chi professional's orders. At the same time, after the plant possessed by the demon's heart hatched into a fairy source-type life form, the plant itself would still exist. However, all the plant's abilities would be concentrated in the hatched fairy's body, and the original plant would be more like an incubator that only retained its instincts. If the fairy source-type life form hatched by the plant was killed in the outside world, it would not really die. It just needed to consume a large amount of spirit chi and a period of nurturing, and it would hatch from the original plant's body again. As long as there was a large amount of spirit chi, the fairy source-type life form hatched by the demon's heart would have an immortal body. What Lin Yuan lacked the least was spirit chi. When Li Xian saw that Lin Yuan was looking at the demon's heart in his hand without saying anything, he gritted his teeth and produced another demon's heart that was exactly the same as the one in Lin Yuan's hand. Li Xian said as he handed the other demon spirit's heart to Lin Yuan. The demon spirit's heart was found in a pinnacle class 4-dimensional rift. It was originally a pair. If it's possible, I'd like to use this pair of fairy hearts to exchange for another pot of golden lotus brocade. When Lin Yuan saw Li Xian handing him the second demon spirit's heart, he could not help but reveal a big smile. Lin Yuan had originally been at a loss about how to use this fairy heart. After all, after Lin Yuan had seen the demon's heart, he had subconsciously chosen two plant species feys. But now, before he could make a choice, the problem was solved. This time, he could have both of them. The third one. End of chapter. Chapter 768. Although Lin Yuan valued the fairy's heart very much, he did not agree immediately. Instead, he looked up at Li Xian and said seriously, "It's not a problem to use these two Yao spirit hearts to exchange for the golden lotus brocade stock. Since you're willing to use two Yao spirit hearts, I can also take out 2 pots of golden lotus brocade beads." Before Li Xian could reveal a pleasantly surprised expression, Lin Yuan changed the topic. "However, these 2 pots of golden lotus pearls are not exchanged, but borrowed. Your Li clan's Li Yun Miao Ken will borrow the right to use 2 golden lotus brocade stalks from me." Lin Yuan's words not only made Li Xian's brows furrow, but even Long Tao's brows furrowed tightly. On the one hand, they did not understand what Lin Yuan meant when he said borrow. On the other hand, they were very resistant to the word borrow from the bottom of their hearts. Because if you borrowed something, you had to return it. If you returned it, you would have nothing left. Long Tao was still fine. If he could borrow a few golden lotus brocades from Lin Yuan at a certain price, he could increase the Coiling Dragon Valley's top creation master resources by nearly 10%. These 10% contained a huge amount of value. Apart from the value, the Coiling Dragon Valley's creation master resources had also increased the Coiling Dragon Valley's external influence. Even if it was a loan, it was a good deal. However, to Li Xian, this kind of method was unacceptable. The fairy's heart was a very precious source-type life form. Using 2 fairies' hearts to rent 2 pots of golden lotus brocade for more than a year was still acceptable. If it was less than a year, it would be tantamount to a loss for Li Xian. If he brought the rented golden lotus brocade stock back to the Li family, he would definitely be acknowledged by the family elders. However, when the family's seniors got used to using the golden lotus brocade stock and Lin Yuan took it back, this kind of change from extravagance to frugality would definitely cause the Li family's seniors to experience a psychological drop. Thus, Li Xian was truly unable to accept Lin Yuan's suggestion of borrowing such a method. Li Xian glanced at Long Tao and realized that he was frowning but had no intention of speaking. Li Xian turned to express his opinion to Lin Yuan. However, before Li Xian could speak, Lin Yuan chuckled and said, "You're right. Borrowing is just a formality. Brothers, don't mind it. As long as the two of you don't sell or rent the Golden Lotus brocade stock to other forces, I can set the loan period at 100 years. However, if the Golden Lotus brocade plant is leased to another force, the loan period will be terminated immediately." Lin Yuan's words were very resolute, but his resolute words made Li Xian and Long Tao's frown ease at the same time. The loan period of 100 years was actually no different from a permanent transaction. The reason Lin Yuan had added a loan period of 100 years was that he did not want the Golden Lotus Brocade Trust to flow out of their hands. This was something that both Li Yun and Li Yun Niao Can, who came from peak forces like Coiling Dragon Valley and Li Yun Niao Can, could understand. For example, when Coiling Dragon Valley and Li Yun Niao Can traded rare resources with other forces, they would sometimes request the other party not to let the resources they obtained from the trade flow out. Li Xian immediately nodded. "No problem. Once the Golden Lotus brocade bead arrives at our Dawn Cloud Bird Nest, it will definitely not leak out." After saying that, Li Xian chuckled and continued to probe. "Lin Yuan, I wonder how many Golden Lotus brocade plants you have. I would like to borrow a few more pots from you." When Long Tao heard that Li Xian already had 3 pots of Golden Lotus brocade plants and wanted to continue trading with Lin Yuan, he immediately could not hold back and said in a low voice, "I would also like to borrow a few pots of Golden Lotus brocade plants. I would also like to borrow a few pots of Golden Lotus brocade plants. However, I don't have the fairy's heart with me. I wonder if I can use other source-type lifeforms to trade?" After saying that, Long Tao took out 5 to 6 different source-type lifeforms. Lin Yuan took a look and found that none of these source-type lifeforms were inferior to the fairy's heart in terms of ability. However, even though they were not inferior, these source-type lifeforms could not be immediately used like the fairy's heart. They could only be considered a kind of hoarding of resources. However, compared to hoarding such quality source-type lifeforms, Lin Yuan had other more urgent needs. Lin Yuan did not answer Long Tao immediately. Instead, he spoke to Long Tao and Li Xian. Instead, he said to Long Tao and Li Xian, "Since everyone wants to talk about the Golden Lotus brocade plants, there are too many people above the Muxiang residence. Why don't we eat later and go for a ride above the clouds first?" Li Xian immediately understood Lin Yuan's intention and chuckled in the carriage. "Rosy Red Phoenix, go above the clouds and use the Cloud Shield ability." After Li Xian gave the order, 6 melodious phoenix cries responded to him. Lin Yuan looked at the scenery outside and found that the 6 phoenix Rosy Phoenix carriage was rapidly ascending into the sky, getting higher and higher from the ground. However, the interior of the carriage was so stable that one could not feel the ups and downs of ascending. As early as when Lin Yuan had used true data to observe the Rosy Red Phoenix, he had noticed its platinum ability, Cloud Shield. The effect of Cloud Shield could effectively block the transmission of spiritual energy from the inside to the outside while isolating external detection abilities. It greatly increased the 6 Phoenix Rosy Phoenix carriage's privacy. After the 6 Phoenix Rosy Phoenix carriage was completely enveloped by Cloud Shield, Lin Yuan spoke. "Forget about source-type lifeforms, but if you have law origin crystals, I'm still very willing to trade for the Golden Lotus brocade plants." Lin Yuan's words made the 6 Phoenix Rosy Phoenix carriage quiet for a full minute before Long Tao swallowed his saliva and asked, "May I know how many law origin crystals I need to borrow a pot of Golden Lotus brocade plants?" Lin Yuan stretched out his hand and showed 3 fingers. "Add another 0, and you can borrow a pot of Golden Lotus brocade plants." Lin Yuan was asking for 30 law origin crystals to exchange for a pot of Golden Lotus brocade plants. Compared to exchanging a bronze/epic Fey for 1 law origin crystal, it could be said that he was asking for an exorbitant price. However, Law Origin crystals did not have any practical use and only had a symbolic meaning. Compared to the Golden Lotus brocade plants, which could replace Creation Master's resources, they were equivalent to trash. Moreover, the top factions had hoarded Law Origin crystals for hundreds of years and had a large inventory. Therefore, Lin Yuan had offered 30 Law Origin crystals. Lin Yuan originally thought that his bid was already very high, but he didn't expect that after he made a bid, Long Tao and Li Xian would eagerly bid without even thinking. "I want 17 pots first. I want 9 more pots." Long Tao and Li Xian's thoughts were very simple. Li Xian now had 3 pots of Golden Lotus brocade plants, which was enough to arrange for 3 pinnacle class for Creation Masters in the family. Another 9 pots of Golden Lotus brocade beads would also allow the remaining 9 class for Creation Masters to use the Golden Lotus brocade plants. The second was even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 769. Long Tao had the same idea. The 17 pots of Golden Lotus brocade were just enough to accommodate all the Creation Masters in the clan who were class 4 and above. As for the Law Origin crystals, the family's inventory was definitely sufficient. Besides, the other members of the family would only approve of such a transaction and not oppose it. Lin Yuan only had a total of 10 Golden Lotus brocade stalks. He had given Li Xian 3 pots and Master Lan Qin 1 pot. Now, he only had 6 pots of Golden Lotus brocade stalks left. However, Long Tao and Li Xian wanted to trade a total of 26 pots of Golden Lotus brocade plants. "I don't have that many Golden Lotus brocade stalks with me. I only have 6 pots right now. If you want to borrow the remaining Golden Lotus brocade pearls, you'll have to reserve them in advance. As for how long the transaction will take, I can't say for sure, but it won't take more than 8 days." When Lin Yuan said this, he had already calculated in his heart. One of the targets he wanted to combine with the 2 demon hearts from Li Xian was the Golden Lotus brocade mother ramets. In fact, ever since he had seen the first source-type life form, the fairy heart, he had been trying to decide between the Golden Lotus brocade stalk and the sea burial lotus flower. The Golden Lotus brocade stalk's mother stalk would instinctively devour the nutrients stored in the child stalks to strengthen itself. For this reason, after Master Hongshan started cultivating the Golden Lotus brocade's child ramets, he needed to spend all his time concocting the spiritual liquid to speed up the growth of the child ramets. Before the mother ramets could react and absorb the energy in the body, the child ramets would break away from the mother ramet's exclusive skill. He combined the demon's heart with the Golden Lotus brocade ortet, allowing the Golden Lotus brocade ortet to transform into a fairy source-type life form. He would then let the Golden Lotus brocade bead, which had transformed into a source-type life form, see him at first glance, and he would be able to control the Golden Lotus brocade plants ortet at will. This way, he could command the Golden Lotus brocade to suppress its instincts and not let it absorb the nutrients from the child ramets. Instead, it allowed the Golden Lotus brocade beads to pour the nutrients from the mother ramets into the child ramets, speeding up the separation of the child ramets from the mother ramets to become independent. In this way, Master Hongshan would be free to do other things. It was the same as leaving a class for Creation Master labor force for Lin Yuan. As for the nutrients consumed by the Golden Lotus brocade ramets, he did not need to spend any effort, as the pure spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone could perfectly make up for the nutrients consumed by the brocade ramets. When the Golden Lotus brocade mother ramets transformed into a fairy source-type life form, they would possess extremely high intelligence. He might also discover the abilities and potential that the Golden Lotus brocade plant had not displayed when it was a plant fey. Lin Yuan was not sure how fast the Golden Lotus brocade pearl's mother ramets could nurture its child ramets. The 8 days he had just given were not based on the mother ramet's speed. Instead, it was time for genius to concoct the lush spiritual liquid. Genius could now concoct 3 bottles of exuberant spiritual fluid every day. In about a week, it could concoct 20 bottles of exuberant spiritual fluid. 20 bottles of flourishing spirit liquid were enough to free 10 golden lotus brocade seedlings from the mother's control. Long Tao and Li Xian did not expect Lin Yuan to agree so readily to their large number of requests. They were overjoyed. Long Tao and Li Xian were not the only ones who were happy. Lin Yuan was also happy. A total of 26 pots of golden lotus brocade plants were enough for him to exchange for 780 law origin crystals in 8 days. It could be said that his gains from this transaction were more than the total number of law origin crystals he had obtained previously. He had not been sure if the law source crystals he had could raise Death's Law from Myth 3 to the Creation Tribulation. In that case, he now had the confidence to raise Death's Law from Myth 3 to the Creation Tribulation. While speaking, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of the pseudo-skeletal royal dragon's bone marrow that Long Tao had used in the Fey Observer Guild. Long Tao, I wonder if you can trade me some of the bone marrow of the pseudo-skeletal royal dragon in your hands. Upon hearing that, Long Tao waved his hand and handed Lin Yuan a large crystal bottle. The bottle was half filled with a purplish gold viscous liquid. After receiving it, Lin Yuan realized that the weight of the purplish gold viscous liquid was unexpectedly heavy. This showed how dense the pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow was. Long Tao said, "I'll give you this bottle of pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow. If you need more bone marrow in the future, just tell me. I'll give you as much as you need." At that moment, Long Tao's favorable impression of Lin Yuan had increased a little. If Lin Yuan wanted a living pseudo-humorous dragon from him, he would be in a dilemma. Long Tao had discovered at the golden lotus brocade beads that Lin Yuan had taken out was a kind of solitary plant that could not be transplanted or split. However, Fays like the pseudo-humorous dragon were hermaphrodites and would lay a dragon egg every few decades. After 5 years, the dragon egg would hatch into a young pseudo-humorous dragon. Therefore, the Long family had always been extremely strict with the pseudo-humorous dragon's control. In the coiled Dragon Valley, non-core members did not even have a chance to see it. Only core members were qualified to see the pseudo-humorous dragon and extract its bone marrow. Each adult pseudo-humorous dragon was over 10 meters long. In addition, they were gluttonous and could quickly absorb nutrients from food to produce new bone marrow. Therefore, the pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow, which was highly praised outside, was not particularly precious in the Long family. Even the Class 2 creation masters in the coiled Dragon Valley could apply to use the pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow to enhance their phase. This was also the fundamental reason why the coiled Dragon Valley was still able to suppress the Miao family's Beast Creation Park despite the Miao family's crazy expansion and development. It could be said that the pseudo-humorous dragon was the Long family's foundation, and it must not be leaked out. Even if Lin Yuan really wanted it, Long Tao could only reject him. However, Lin Yuan had a sense of propriety and had only said that he wanted the pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow. This allowed Long Tao to heave a sigh of relief. Lin Yuan didn't stand on ceremony with Long Tao's gift. He immediately stored the crystal bottle that contained the pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow into the diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan didn't want the pseudo-humorous dragon's essence blood for himself. He was preparing it for Master Hongshen and Genius. Master Hongshen and Genius were using traditional creation master methods to enhance phase by concocting spirit fluids. The pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow and the golden lotus pearls leaves could greatly increase Genius and Master Hongshen's efficiency. This crystal bottle contained at least 1,000 drops of the pseudo-humorous dragon's bone marrow, which was enough for Genius and Master Hongshen to use for a long period of time. After accepting Long Tao's gift, Lin Yuan suddenly had an idea. He flipped his hand, and a diamond fragment that wasn't even the size of Lin Yuan's fingernail appeared in his hand. First more, end of this chapter. Chapter 770. Lin Yuan handed the thumbnail-sized broken diamond to Long Tao. "Since you're giving me the pseudo-skeletal royal dragon's bone marrow, I'll give you a gift in return." Long Tao didn't want to take the thing in Lin Yuan's hand because the pseudo-skeletal royal dragon's bone marrow was not valuable to the Coiling Dragon Valley. However, when Long Tao saw what the broken diamond in Lin Yuan's hand was, he couldn't bring himself to reject it. Long Tao didn't expect Lin Yuan to take out a law crystal that contained pure power of the law. Such things were the patent of Class 5 creation masters. Even though the Coiling Dragon Valley had an Emperor-class expert, it was the Coiling Dragon Valley's Emperor-class expert who wanted to ask the Moon Empress, Chef Supreme, and Bamboo Monarch to help concoct a law crystal that contained pure power of the law. They also needed to make an appointment a year in advance and bring along a massive amount of resources. Even so, it was not certain that they could not ask for the face of an Emperor-class expert. It could be said that apart from obtaining law crystals from the 3 Class 5 creation masters, any Myth 3 phase could only rely on absorbing the power of the law from law crystals of the same attribute to strengthen their laws if they wanted to increase their strength. However, even if the law crystal's attribute was the same as the Myth breed phase comprehended, it was extremely difficult to absorb it. It required all kinds of precious spiritual ingredients to temper the law in the law crystal before it could be absorbed. However, law crystals that contained pure power of the law could be easily absorbed by Myth breed phase. After absorbing it, it would immediately strengthen the Myth breed phase comprehended laws. Moreover, law crystals that contained pure power of the law also had a strong effect of inducing phase to transform their quality. Although Myth breed phase could only absorb the power of the law in law crystals at Myth 3, sometimes a small piece of law crystal that contained pure power of the law could allow phase stuck at the pinnacle of Myth 2 to have a chance to welcome the world cleansing and advance to Myth 3. A large number of law crystals that contained pure power of the law could also allow phase stuck at the pinnacle of Myth 3 to take another step forward. From there, they could complete the transformation of life and transform into Emperor creation breed phase. Long Tao's father had a contracted Fey that had been stuck at the pinnacle of Myth 2 for several years. His father's contracted Fey had suffered an internal injury when it had just become a Myth breed and had damaged its foundation. Even if he was healed by a creation master, he would barely be able to reach the pinnacle of Myth 2. There was basically no hope for him to reach Myth 3. Last year, his father had begged his grandfather to ask the Bamboo Monarch to help him cultivate a law crystal that contained pure nomological force. However, Bamboo Monarch had rejected his request to nurture the law crystal this year. It was said that the Bamboo Monarch had been infected with bad luck and was unable to help him refine the law crystal. As a result, Long Tao's father was still in a depressed state. As his son, Long Tao naturally saw his father's depression and was anxious in his heart. Moreover, Long Tao was very familiar with Long Tao's father's contracted Fey. He had often coaxed Long Tao when he was young and was no different from Long Tao's biological uncle. Long Tao naturally wanted his father's contracted Fey to break through to Myth 3. This small diamond-like law crystal that Lin Yuan had given him was enough to let his father's contracted Fey cross the threshold of the pinnacle of Myth 2. After taking the law crystal from Lin Yuan's hand, Long Tao stood up in the Fey carriage. He bowed deeply to Lin Yuan and said gratefully, "Thank you. I'll be taking this law crystal. I can't thank you with words. If you need anything in the future, just let me know." Lin Yuan was slightly stunned by Long Tao's sudden strong gratitude. Immediately, Lin Yuan knew that the law crystal fragment he had handed over should have helped Long Tao a lot. However, Lin Yuan did not want to find out more about what he had helped Long Tao. On one hand, Lin Yuan would take out this law crystal fragment openly because he was now the Moon Empress disciple. Even if he took out the law crystal, there would be nothing wrong with it. On the other hand, it was also Lin Yuan's hint to Long Tao and Li Xian. This time, Lin Yuan had exchanged the golden lotus brocade seedling for 780 law origin crystals. The reason he had traded the Law Origin crystals was that they were what he currently needed the most. After that, Lin Yuan still wanted to trade Law crystal fragments and even complete Law crystals with Long Tao and Li Xian. This required throwing a brick to attract jade, and the Law Origin crystal that contained pure nomological power was a very good catalyst. The Law crystal that Lin Yuan had just given Long Tao was just the amount extracted from one Law Origin crystal. If this catalyst could draw out more of the resources Lin Yuan needed in these few days, then it was possible for Endless Summer to reach the pinnacle of Myth 3 before the Nyx assembly began. It would welcome the baptism of the world creation calamity and become a creation seed, a creation calamity Fey. However, rare things were expensive, so Lin Yuan could not propose the Law crystal transaction himself. Instead, he needed to wait for someone to take the initiative to ask him. Lin Yuan would not let too many of the Law crystals that contained pure nomological power flow out of his hands. Such a good thing naturally had to be consumed internally like a bronze/legend Fey. If Long Tao was only excited when he saw the Law Origin crystal that contained pure nomological power, then Li Xian's eyes widened when he saw it. After thinking of his family's situation, Li Xian's eyes gave birth to a trace of determination, joy, and determination. The Li family's Li Yun bird niche was different from the Long family's coiled dragon valley. Li Yun bird niche was a top faction that had only risen in the past 70 years. In terms of foundation, there was still a gap between them and coiling dragon valley. In the early years, the Li family's Li Yun Niaocan had relied on the Long family's coiling dragon valley to rise to power. The Li family might have monopolized several types of flying-type Feys over the years and occupied more than 50% of the flying-type Fey market share. However, he was still not qualified to meet the Moon Empress, Chef Supreme, and Bamboo Monarch to ask them to help him refine Law crystals. In Li Xian's opinion, he did not need to trade many Law Origin crystals with Lin Yuan as long as he could grasp Lin Yuan's channel. In the future, his position in the Dawn Cloud Bird Nest would be even higher than some of the elders in the family. Lin Yuan, Li Xian, and Long Tao had talked about what they wanted to talk about in the Six Phoenix Rosy Phoenix above the clouds. They did not talk about business during the meal and only talked about trivial matters, so they were naturally very carefree. Lin Yuan wasn't a big drinker, but he still had a drink with Long Tao and Li Xian. Compared to the deal with Long Tao and Li Xian and Long Tao were both outstanding disciples of the younger generation. After getting to know each other, the three of them regretted not having met each other earlier. After exchanging numbers, Lin Yuan returned to the mansion. The second one was even worse. End of chapter. Chapter 771. When he returned to the mansion, he saw Lu Jia packing a table full of freshly prepared dishes. Lu Jia said when he saw that Lin Yuan had returned. Lin Yuan, Master asked me to go to the land of spirit suppression to help upgrade my sacred source life form. I might have to stay in the land of soul suppression for the next few days. I'll come back to find you before the Nyx assembly begins. We can go together. Lu Jia had already told Lin Yuan about contracting a sacred source life form. He did not tell Lin Yuan about the sacred source life form's abilities because he did not want Lin Yuan to worry. Therefore, Lu Jia had nothing to hide from Lin Yuan about the purpose of going to the land of spirit suppression. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan walked over and helped Lu Jia pack up the freshly made dishes on the table. At the same time, he was also prepared to enter the Spirit Lock spatial zone and let Red Thorn enter the metamorphosis state. Then, he would immediately let the Demon's Heart and the Flower Brocade Pearls combine. He turned the Flower Brocade Pearl into a fairy source-type life form and made it produce a large number of mature child ramets. Previously, he had wanted to rely on his own strength to move forward step by step. To be honest, Lin Yuan had never truly left the Moon Empress protection. Without the Moon Empress, Lin Yuan would have died in the water world dimensional rift that Chen Kuang and Lin Yuan were in. Before he had the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, he had also enhanced many good items, such as the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carps. However, he had never thought of giving them to the Moon Empress. This was because there were fays in the Radiant Moon Palace that were comparable to or even superior to the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp. Even though Lin Yuan could express his feelings by giving the Mountain and River Eternal Life Carp to the Moon Empress, it was of no use to her. As early as when he had decided to nurture the Golden Lotus Brocade, he had already planned to nurture 100 of them to give to his master, the Moon Empress. These 100 Golden Lotus Brocade stalks were Lin Yuan's kind intentions. At the same time, it was also the first piece of progress that Lin Yuan had given the Moon Empress in the past 8 months. After sending Lu Jia off, he entered the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone in a flash. Lin Yuan, who had just entered the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, was immediately startled as he realized that Red Thorn's Mouth of Relinquish, which had entered hibernation and was waiting to transform, was constantly shaking violently. The vibrating Mouth of Relinquish contained dense energy that belonged solely to plants. The energy of these plants exploded in the Mouth of Relinquish as though they were trying to break the Mouth of Relinquish and escape. However, the Mouth of Relinquish was like a sturdy iron wall that trapped the boundless plant energy within. He hurriedly walked forward and placed his palm on the wrinkled skin that was not covered by Red Thorn's Mouth of Relinquish. He circulated the spiritual power in his body to sense the changes in Red Thorn's body. After sensing it, Lin Yuan's face revealed an irrepressible joy. Red Thorn's current situation was the plant energy released by the source seed that had yet to germinate when it was being assimilated by Red Thorn. Lin Yuan didn't expect that an ungerminated source seed could actually release so much plant energy. He immediately took out the 3rd source seed that had grown into a vine from Li Xian and threw it into Red Thorn's half-open Mouth of Relinquish. If it was said that Red Thorn remained motionless after being hit by the boundless plant energy in the Mouth of Relinquish, then Red Thorn would not be able to move at all. At that moment, the sleeping Red Thorn was like a ferocious beast that had suddenly awakened and suddenly roared. The Mouth of Relinquish's violent shaking emitted sound waves that made Lin Yuan's eardrums feel pressure. Lin Yuan looked at the expanding and shrinking Mouth of Relinquish and felt that Red Thorn's Mouth of Relinquish was like a wine flask that was brewing a fine wine called rebirth and transformation. At that moment, Lin Yuan sensed Red Thorn's request through the bloodline that was connected to him. In the past, Red Thorn's request would only appear when it was evolving. This time, Red Thorn had devoured 2 source seeds and actually sent him an evolution request. However, Red Thorn's request this time was different from when it had evolved in the past. In the past, Red Thorn had asked Lin Yuan's opinion on how to develop a new function. At this moment, Red Thorn's request was asking Lin Yuan which 2 previously evolved functions he wanted to enhance. This made Lin Yuan involuntarily ponder. It had not been easy for Red Thorn to go from an ordinary source seed to its current state. Red Thorn was Lin Yuan's first source-type life form and the first companion that had accompanied him apart from Genius and Chimey. Furthermore, it was something that his parents had exchanged their lives and achievements for. It could be said that Lin Yuan had spent a lot of effort on nurturing Red Thorn. When Lin Yuan had nurtured Red Thorn, the first direction of evolution was to rely on devouring flesh and blood to obtain energy. This direction had also induced Red Thorn to become a predatory plant and then grow the Mouth of Relinquish. Lin Yuan's second evolution direction was reflected in Red Thorn's digestive ability. The digestive ability had allowed Red Thorn to grow multiple rose-shaped digestive cavities and devouring vines that cooperated with predation. Finally, it had grown the organ, the tongue of Relinquish. Carnivorous plants hunted for the sake of digestion. While strengthening Red Thorn's digestive ability, it had also completed Lin Yuan's initial idea of Red Thorn's combat style. This idea had gone through countless optimizations and continued to this day. Lin Yuan's third evolution direction for Red Thorn was proliferation. This allowed Red Thorn to change from a single Fey after the first and second evolution into a Fey that relied on group combat. Spore reproduction gave Red Thorn the ability to quickly spread out a sea of flowers for combat. In Lin Yuan's opinion, the third evolution was also the core of Red Thorn's overall evolution. The third evolution allowed Red Thorn to have the spore reproduction method, and it also linked Red Thorn's first and second evolutions. This allowed Red Thorn's three evolution directions to be linked together and become a unique combat system. As for the fourth evolution, Lin Yuan had enhanced Red Thorn's energy storage when it had become a silver/fantasy breed. This enhancement increased Red Thorn's endurance and the spreading ability of Red Thorn's spore reproduction. It was considered an enhancement to Red Thorn's overall ability and increased its tolerance for mistakes in combat. The Eye of Relinquish, which had appeared after the fourth evolution, did not only have an energy storage effect in combat. The Eye of Relinquish assisted Red Thorn to spread out the battle line in the early stage. After the battle line was spread out, the excess Eye of Relinquish would be transmitted to various places in the Sea of Flowers through the vines connected to the child ramets. The flesh energy stored in the Eye of Relinquish would become a powerful way for Red Thorn to attack the enemy. Red Thorn had been relying on the digestive fluid's strong acidic corrosion and the vine's physical damage to fight against the enemy. When facing a weak enemy, Red Thorn could strangle the target in a large area, but when facing a powerful enemy, Red Thorn could only be helpless. However, by flexibly using the Eye of Relinquish in combat, it could use the Eye of Relinquish as a method to kill powerful foes. It increased the lethality and deterrence of Red Thorn's Sea of Flowers, allowing the powerful enemies in the Sea of Flowers to become Red Thorn's killing units. However, Lin Yuan could only enhance two of these four excellent enhancement directions. This made Lin Yuan feel a little troubled for a moment and did not know how to choose the third one. End of this chapter. Chapter 772. The diversity of life was complex and ever-changing. Every accidental mutation contained infinite opportunities. It was just like how the digestive cavity, which was originally used to assist in digestion, had been replaced by the tongue of Relinquish when Red Thorn became a fantasy breed. It had degenerated into a dozen or so large flowers that could only play a decorative role. It was these useless flowers that gave Red Thorn the ability to communicate normally with humans during its later evolution. At the same time, after Red Thorn devoured the water world dimensional lifeforms, each petal in the flower turned into a gill-shaped petal, increasing the ability to breathe underwater. As Red Thorn devoured a large amount of the water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh and blood, its ability to breathe underwater had been perfectly inherited to the digestive cavity and nibbling vines that were produced through its spores. This allowed Red Thorn to instantly put on an offensive that was not weaker than on the ground. This was the improvement brought by the accidental mutation. Therefore, considering these accidental possibilities, Lin Yuan felt that it was necessary to improve the four abilities: devour, digest, spore reproduction, and energy storage. However, at that moment, Red Thorn's Mouth of Relinquish mutation upgraded again. The vines that grew from the source seed that Lin Yuan threw into the Mouth of Relinquish seemed to be alive in the Mouth of Relinquish and quickly spat out the hidden plant energy inside. If Lin Yuan did not make a decision quickly, Red Thorn's Mouth of Relinquish would soon be unable to contain the constantly increasing plant energy inside. In the end, Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and made a choice before instructing Red Thorn. Red Thorn, enhance the devour and digestion abilities. After pointing out Red Thorn's evolution direction, Lin Yuan tried to give Red Thorn another command. It was to let Red Thorn maintain its basic eating function during the evolution process while continuously producing Eyes of Relinquish. After Lin Yuan received Red Thorn's response through bloodline perception, he was relieved. After Lin Yuan gave the command, the originally furnace-like Mouth of Relinquish, along with the vigorous plant energy contained in it, seemed to have been suddenly closed and completely silent. However, the Mouth of Relinquish was still open, ready to devour flesh and produce Eyes of Relinquish according to Lin Yuan's command at any time. Then, Lin Yuan sent Red Thorn back into the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. Red Thorn needed to sleep for a period of time every time it evolved and metamorphosed. This time, it was unknown how long Red Thorn would sleep. However, it should give Lin Yuan a huge surprise when it woke up. In the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box, Red Thorn relied on its instincts to gorge itself on the surrounding water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. It also produced new eyes of relinquish and produced a few slave plants that were on standby to be transported into the jade basin of the blood brew grapevine. The blood brew grapevine did not leave Red Thorn's eye of relinquish for long. It was at most 2 hours. However, in just 2 hours, the blood grapevine, the main vine, the blood brew grapevine and the main vine, had already withered. It was as if it was ready to be metabolized at any time, leaving the nutrients contained in it for the main vine. Fortunately, Red Thorn's eye of relinquish was replenished, and it could sustain the consumption of the blood brew grapevine. Otherwise, if the heaven and earth spirit blood brew grapevine were to make adjustments and metabolize the auxiliary vines and most of the unripened blood brew grapes due to the lack of flesh energy, Lin Yuan would suffer a huge loss. Lin Yuan did not make an impulsive decision to let Red Thorn enhance its first evolution's devouring function and its second evolution's digestion function. It was not an impulsive decision that Lin Yuan had made to enhance Red Thorn's first evolution's devouring function and second evolution's digestion function. It was a deliberate decision. In Lin Yuan's opinion, the devouring function and digestion function could be looked at together. They complemented each other and formed the pillars of Red Thorn's combat system. Without the support of Red Thorn's devouring function and digestion function, enhancing the energy storage function and spore function would only be an illusion. The energy storage function could be seen as a large reservoir, and Red Thorn would pour its own water into the reservoir in case of emergencies. If the source of Red Thorn's water flow remained unchanged, no matter how large the reservoir was, it would still not be able to store water. The spore function could be seen as Red Thorn's way of expanding and repairing the battlefield. Although the spore function was very important, if Red Thorn did not have enough flesh energy. Even if the spore function was enhanced, it would still not be able to unleash its power. Lin Yuan might not be sure what benefits Red Thorn's enhanced devouring function and digestion function would bring, but these two functions were indeed the foundation of Red Thorn's combat and evolution. As a carnivorous plant, Red Thorn had always been able to devour the flesh of living beings. Although Red Thorn's energy acquisition had been determined from the start of its division, the general direction would not change. However, if Red Thorn could devour more things after enhancing its devouring function, even if it could not obtain energy from it to increase its grade, it could still absorb a portion of the devoured object's characteristics to strengthen itself. It had to be known that Red Thorn could absorb and assimilate the characteristics of the flesh and blood of various dimensional creatures. For example, if Red Thorn could devour metallic spiritual ingredients and attach the absorbed energy and characteristics to the vines that it produced, then, to what extent would Red Thorn's overall combat effect be enhanced? Lin Yuan had initially chosen to evolve Red Thorn's devouring function, intending to fundamentally change Red Thorn's evolution potential. However, when he decided to evolve the devouring function, he immediately finalized the digestion function. This was because the evolved devouring function required the assistance of the same strength of digestion. Otherwise, if Red Thorn really devoured metallic spiritual ingredients, it would not be able to digest them without a powerful digestion function. Furthermore, the increase in digestion function would imperceptibly increase the efficiency of the mouth of relinquish. While it could accelerate Red Thorn's evolution, it could also increase the energy storage function and evolve the eye of relinquished production speed. Furthermore, it would allow the spore cavity to have more energy supply and spray out more spores, fundamentally improving the sea of flowers. This was also in line with Red Thorn's positioning in combat. Next, Lin Yuan just had to quietly wait for Red Thorn to complete its transformation. After dealing with Red Thorn, Lin Yuan walked to the side of the spirit pool and started to carefully study the sea burial lotus flower. During this period of time, the carcinoma Fey had repeatedly expressed its desire for the worm-patterned coral jade. The first batch of coral jades in the spirit lock spatial zone had also matured. Other than the portion that he had promised Gao Feng, Lin Yuan took the first batch of coral jades with insect patterns. Lin Yuan originally planned to lay a layer of worm-patterned coral jade in the hidden Wirm lake, but he had postponed it. In any case, the angelfish of bliss in the hidden Wirm lake were already platinum, and their demand for the worm-patterned coral jade wasn't that high. As such, Lin Yuan poured all the remaining worm-patterned coral jade into the spirit pool and covered the bottom of the spirit pool. When the carcinoma Fey encountered the worm-patterned coral jade, it was as though it had gone crazy and started to absorb the pure spirit qi. Instead, it immediately used a large number of bone lotus flowers to cover the worm-patterned coral jade and started to absorb the worm-patterned coral jade's energy. However, unlike what Lin Yuan expected, the sea burial lotus flower, which usually absorbed pure spirit qi like a pig eating ginseng fruits, wasn't in a hurry to absorb the worm-patterned coral jade's energy. Instead, it was slowly savoring it. The first time was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 773. Lin Yuan was going to enhance this drought sand boar before evolving Genius and Blackie into fantasy breeds. Genius and Blackie had been stuck at Bronze X/Legend for a long time. Lin Yuan had been looking forward to their evolution into fantasy breeds for a long time. After entering the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan was appalled to find that there was a drastic change. The spirit qi at the place where Lin Yuan was standing was very thin, and it was not even comparable to the spirit qi density in the outside world. At that moment, the floating island whale, sky cloud crane, gray, and the twin red pagoda were unable to absorb any spirit qi. Due to the lack of spirit qi, Lin Yuan's Bronze/Legend elemental shellfish were no longer producing elemental pearls. When the wind speed rapid antelope saw Lin Yuan enter the spirit lock spatial zone, it hurriedly ran to his side. It rubbed against Lin Yuan's leg and looked worriedly in the direction of the spirit pool. Ever since Lin Yuan had contracted Morbius, there had never been such an unforeseen event, even when Morbius had reached bronze and the spirit lock spatial zone had doubled in size. Furthermore, Morbius was still asleep, which meant that the current change in the spirit lock spatial zone had nothing to do with Morbius. Lin Yuan could not be bothered to comfort the wind speed rapid antelope as he hurriedly ran in the direction of the spirit pool. He had discovered that all the spirit qi in the spirit lock spatial zone was being absorbed by something in the spirit pool. No one knew better than Lin Yuan what was in the spirit pool. After Lin Yuan had modified the spirit pool, it could be renamed as the Ink Spirit Pool. Due to the awakening of the dragon species bloodline, Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Qi Imprint, had changed. Lin Yuan had raised many Spirit Siphon goldfish that contained the dragon species bloodline in the spirit pool. These Spirit Siphon goldfish that contained the dragon species bloodline had also been evolved to bronze by Lin Yuan. They had also awakened the thin dragon species bloodline in their bodies and evolved into Spirit Gather goldfish. A large number of Spirit Gather goldfish with the dragon species bloodline were affected by Blackie's exclusive skill, and their Spirit Qi gathered in the Spirit Qi imprint. This caused the Spirit Qi accumulation speed in the Spirit Qi imprint to increase by at least 30%. The spirit pool also contained the pregnant supreme-grade angelfish of bliss. During this period, Lin Yuan had been sprinkling aurora pollen into the spirit pool, causing Blackie to like its smell. What was left was the carcinoma Fey, sea burial lotus flower, and the heaven and earth Fey, reflection sun king lotus, that Lin Yuan had placed in the spirit lock spatial zone to nurture. Lin Yuan went to the side of the spirit pool and saw that the sea burial lotus flower, which could not absorb spirit qi, was constantly producing bone lotus flowers and spreading toward the direction where the spiritual power was gathered. Nearly all the spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone was gathered at one spot, forming a spirit chi whirlpool that contained immense power. It easily crushed the white bone lotus flower into pieces. Lin Yuan originally thought that the sea burial lotus flower was the misbehaving tumor fey in the spirit lock spatial zone. However, he did not expect it to be the heaven and earth fey, the sun reflection king lotus, that had not changed at all. He shook his wrist and let the amber button-shaped source sand on his cuff seep out a large amount of ferromanganese sand. The ferromanganese sand turned into 3 huge chain swords and stabbed toward the spirit chi vortex above the reflection sun king lotus head. After blocking the spirit chi vortex above the reflection sun king lotus head, Lin Yuan used all his strength to scoop up the reflection sun king lotus, which occupied almost half of the spirit pool. He then flashed out of the spirit lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan did not care that the reflection sun king lotus was still dripping with water and threw it on the ground. Lin Yuan did not have the time to check what was wrong with the reflection sun king lotus. He had already returned to the spirit lock spatial zone in a hurry. Lin Yuan realized that after he fished the reflection sun king lotus out of the spirit pool and took it out of the spirit lock spatial zone, the spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone had already reached its original concentration. The spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone had already reached its original concentration due to the spirit pool's decomposition of the energy ores. Lin Yuan hurriedly looked at the floating island whale and the truth-clouded crane, which was in an evolving state beside it. Lin Yuan did not know how long the spirit lock spatial zone's anomaly had been going on for. The floating island whale's incubation was an irreversible process, and it needed to swallow a large amount of spirit chi. If the spirit chi supply was not sufficient, the floating island whale's spirit chi would be damaged. Actually, this was not a big deal. The truth-clouded crane was in the evolution stage, and the lack of spirit chi supply was likely to cause irreversible problems during the evolution process. As for the twin red pagoda's unformed lifeform sacrificial fire, Lin Yuan was not worried. Although the lack of spirit chi would shorten the lifeform sacrificial fire's maturation speed, it would not have much of an impact on the lifeform sacrificial fire itself. After checking on the truth-clouded crane and the floating island whale situation, Lin Yuan was slightly relieved. It seemed that the spirit lock spatial zone's anomaly had only been going on for less than an hour. Although the truth-clouded crane and the floating island whale had been affected, the spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone had already recovered. After some time of nourishment with high-purity spirit chi, the damage from the previous 1 hour would soon be able to recover. Lin Yuan summoned Genius and Chimey. As spirit lock phase, Blackie, the blue flash purple butterfly, and the jasmine lily usually stayed in the spirit lock spatial zone. Unfortunately, the intelligence of the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, the blue flash purple butterfly, and the jasmine lily was too low. Due to the anomaly in the spirit lock spatial zone, Blackie, the blue flash purple butterfly, and the jasmine lily did not realize the seriousness of the matter. Thus, they alerted Lin Yuan. Chimey had been staying in the spirit lock spatial zone's bird nest formed by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Coincidentally, after Chimey evolved into a clear-sound bird sparrow, Lin Yuan had kept it in the spiritual spatial zone. If Chimey or Genius had stayed in the spirit lock spatial zone, they would have been able to immediately alert Lin Yuan when such an anomaly occurred. At that moment, the legend elemental shellfish of various attributes had started to produce heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls again. After Chimey was summoned, it jumped onto Lin Yuan's ear and pecked at his hair with its delicate beak. Lin Yuan, Chimey wants to learn singing. You promised Chimey that you would teach it a song if you had nothing to do. Lin Yuan used his finger to rub Chimey's little head and said, "All right. But Chimey, I'm going to evolve Genius into a fantasy breed first." When Chimey heard Lin Yuan's words, it flapped its wings and flew above Genius' head. It chirped and jumped happily but also said with some worry, "Genius is going to evolve. Genius is going to evolve." This is great. I just hope that when genius evolves, it won't be like Chimey and die of pain. Chimey's words made Lin Yuan's eyes narrow. The second one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 774. In fact, it was fine for the sea burial lotus flower to not complete its positive mutation. After transforming into a fairy, the sea burial lotus flower could still absorb the coral jades with insect patterns and undergo positive mutation. Furthermore, after obtaining intelligence, the sea burial lotus flower could communicate with Lin Yuan clearly and choose the coral jades with insect patterns on its own. There were all sorts of insect patterns on the coral jades, and there would be a few different insect patterns in every dozens of coral jades. When Lin Yuan was nurturing the coral jades, he didn't go through any screening and just took whatever he saw. The more insect patterns there were on the sea burial lotus flower, the better it would be for the evolution of the sea burial lotus flower. When the sea burial lotus flower was growing, the golden lotus brocade's speed would be the same as the sea burial lotus lake. However, the golden lotus brocade's fruit growth speed was obviously much faster than the sea burial lotus flower. The fruit should be condensed from the golden lotus brocade and the sea burial lotus flower's little fairies. The reason why it was slower was that the sea burial lotus flower's little fairies were fighting with the chaos willpower that was originally born in the sea burial lotus flower's body. While the two fruits were growing, the two plants were rapidly absorbing the spirit qi in the spirit lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan placed his hand on the fruits and circulated his spiritual power to pour boundless and pure spirit qi into them. With Lin Yuan's help, the two fruits were constantly growing at a visible speed. Lin Yuan didn't dare to leave the spirit lock spatial zone at this moment. If these two little fellows hatched and saw other things recognizing them as their owners, Lin Yuan would want to cry but have no tears. This was because the fairy heart's little fairies would be attached to the first life form they saw. This life form didn't just refer to humans, but any living creature. There were plenty of living creatures in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone, and it was even possible for the two little fairies to see each other when they hatched. Therefore, Lin Yuan simply let the source sand suck out the ferromanganese chain sword and build 2 rooms in front of him. The rooms were sealed, and Lin Yuan stood at the door to ensure that the two little fairies could only see him when they hatched. Soon enough, the golden lotus brocade's fruit cracked. A little fairy with a pair of transparent wings that was only the size of Lin Yuan's palm flew out. Her long pink hair was like a pink brocade on a golden lotus. The little fairy had fair skin and wore a light golden puffy skirt. The puffy skirt was round and looked like a carved golden bell. After hatching, the little fairy looked around curiously. When it saw Lin Yuan, it immediately flapped its wings and arrived in front of him. She held Lin Yuan's face and rubbed it lovingly with her fingers before happily dancing around Lin Yuan. At that moment, he realized that the sea burial lotus flower's fruit was about to crack. He hurriedly let the little fairy hatch from the golden lotus brocade beads hide behind him to ensure that he was the first person the sea burial lotus flower hatched would see. Immediately after, Lin Yuan saw a silver-haired fairy in white armor with lotus flower patterns and 3 pairs of wings on its back. Her long silver hair fluttered behind the sea burial lotus flower like a blooming silver lotus. The sea burial lotus flower, which had transformed into a fairy, also saw Lin Yuan after a brief daze. A suspicious blush immediately appeared on its originally cold face. It flapped its 3 pairs of wings and landed on Lin Yuan's finger obediently, looking him in the eyes. Lin Yuan was about to melt from the cuteness of the sea burial lotus flower's exquisite little fairy. Did she have to blush crazily when they looked at each other? All of a sudden, the sea burial lotus flower's little fairy cried out, "ABA, ABA, ABA." This sound was like a musical scale and was very pleasing to the ear. The sea burial lotus flower's little fairy eagerly waved its small white hands and was obviously trying to express something to Lin Yuan. The moment the sea burial lotus flower's fairy-like source-type life form saw Lin Yuan, it automatically recognized him as its master. However, Lin Yuan and the sea burial lotus flower did not form a contract, so there was no way to communicate with each other through spiritual communication. The sea burial lotus flower and the golden lotus pearl's ownership recognition method was like a person raising two puppies. Even though this person and the two puppies had a binding relationship, the two puppies instinctively treated this person as their everything. To the sea burial lotus flower and the golden lotus pearl's little fairy, such a 10,000-year contract might be even more intimate to Lin Yuan than the phase that had a spiritual contract with him. When Lin Yuan saw the sea burial lotus flower's eagerness to express itself, he had an idea. Fairy-like source-type lifeforms had spiritual intelligence that surpassed human spirit chi professionals. If they wanted to learn a language, they just had to listen and speak more, and they would be able to learn it quickly. However, this required a process. If they wanted to be able to communicate freely and not reply mechanically, they would need to practice for at least a month. However, with a good teacher like Genius around, they wouldn't need to waste so much time. Lin Yuan shouted at the treetop. "Genius, come and teach the students." When Genius heard Lin Yuan's shout, it quickly let out a meow and jolted its butt out of the treetop. It then jogged over to Lin Yuan's leg and scuttled onto his shoulder. It rubbed against Lin Yuan's cheeks before speaking in a childish voice. "Lin Yuan, Genius has finished learning the knowledge for the Class 4 Scholar, Fey Observer, and Fey Analyst. However, the Star Web doesn't have the knowledge for Class 5 Scholar, Fey Observer, and Spiritual Ingredient Analyst for sale. Thus, Genius wishes to browse the Star Web's knowledge base and learn the miscellaneous knowledge. In the future, Genius can be a better teacher to teach those little kittens." Upon hearing Genius' words, Lin Yuan immediately knew that Genius was thinking about teaching the 100 Questions Beast. It seems like Genius has an exceptional sense of responsibility. Alright. As for the information for the Class 5 Scholar, Fey Observer, and Spiritual Ingredient Analyst, Genius will follow me to the Hidden Moon Pavilion. The Hidden Moon Pavilion's 108th, 109th, and 110th floors respectively have the relevant information for the Class 5 Spiritual Ingredient Observer, Class 5 Scholar, and Class 5 Spiritual Ingredient Analyst. We will take a look when we are there. When he was talking to Genius, he realized that the little fairy that had hatched from the golden lotus pearls had been hiding behind him ever since it had hatched from the sea burial lotus flower. Lin Yuan couldn't help but feel a little strange. Lin Yuan placed one of his hands behind his back and felt a weight on his finger. Lin Yuan knew that the little fairy with the golden lotus pearl had landed on his finger. When Lin Yuan brought the hand in front of him, he immediately noticed that the little fairy with the golden lotus pearl was shivering. It was as though it was afraid of something. Chapter 3. End of this chapter. Chapter 775. However, after being splashed by Blackie, Lin Yuan was just as worried about Genius as before. However, he was no longer apprehensive. As a creation master, Lin Yuan, who had evolved so many Feys, knew that he should not be timid in the process of fighting against the heavens. Instead, he should firmly take every step to reach the heavens. Genius had always received special treatment from Wuxia. The special treatment that Wuxia had made for Genius was a medicinal diet made of many spiritual ingredients that could strengthen its constitution. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer also doted on Genius and fed it many rare spiritual ingredients. It could be said that Genius had been baptized by massive and pure spirit chi by his side every day, absorbing the energy from the medicinal diet and spiritual ingredients into its body. It had an excellent foundation. Lin Yuan believed that Genius would definitely be able to create a new path like Chimey. It would become the 100 Questions Beast's pioneer that took a solid step from reality to fantasy. Lin Yuan summoned the dark blue willpower rune that contained the intent of inclusiveness and vastness in the spirit lock spatial zone. This dark blue willpower rune emitted the feeling of vastness of the sea, making the spirit pool seem rather small. Lin Yuan said to Blackie, "Blackie, it's time for you to transform." Blackie might be silly, but it could understand Lin Yuan's words. Blackie leaped out of the water like a carp and welcomed the dark blue willpower rune. Little Black leaped out of the water again and faced the dark blue willpower rune head-on. After Blackie and the willpower rune fused, blue waves flickered in an instant. After Blackie merged with the willpower rune that contained boundless will, blue waves of light flashed in an instant. The sky above the spirit lock pool seemed to have condensed into a world of waves. The spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone surged again and gathered toward the world of waves formed by Blackie's advancement into a fantasy breed. The spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone surged again and gathered toward the billowing world formed by Blackie's advancement into a fantasy breed. Suddenly, this blue world of waves was suffused with a thick ink color. This ink color was different from the colorful black when Lin Yuan had evolved into the obsidian iron wild bull. This ink color was extremely pure, just like the ink color that was formed by countless pale blue stacked in the depths of the ocean. This kind of ink was extremely pure, just like the ink that was formed from countless pale blue stacked together in the depths of the ocean. After the ink black color appeared, ink black clouds appeared where the waves were surging. Upon seeing the ink cloud, Lin Yuan exclaimed, "The clouds come from the dragon. The clouds give birth to thunder and lightning, and after the lightning, there will be a shower." Little Black's flood dragon bloodline is actually so pure. After enhancing so many phases, he was no longer as easily surprised as he had been in the beginning. Now that he was asked to look at the jasmine lily's group growth and fasciation, perhaps only fasciation would surprise him. However, he couldn't help but be surprised by the phenomenon that occurred when Blackie was evolving into a fantasy breed. During the evolution process of dragon species phase, be it WIRM species phase or dinosaur species phase, only those with extremely outstanding bloodlines would have a dragon species phase unique phenomenon. A flood dragon species phase with an excellent bloodline would appear like Blackie's phenomenon of thunder and lightning in the clouds, followed by a shower of lightning. On the other hand, dinosaur phase would produce the phenomenon of the forest being flooded with blood and corpses of all beasts. Regardless of whether it was a flood dragon species phase or a dinosaur species phase, it meant that the flood dragon species phase or dinosaur species phase had the aptitude to become a master dragon species. Blackie had awakened its dragon species bloodline time and time again and actually had the aptitude to become a master dragon species when it was evolving into a fantasy breed from bronze. On one hand, the environment in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone Spirit Pool was incomparable anywhere else in the world. On the other hand, Blackie, which Lin Yuan had chosen in Zhou Jiasen's store, was definitely the destiny heavenly fish among all the dragon eyes spirit siphon goldfish. It had an unparalleled aptitude. However, when it had blended into the crowd, Lin Yuan's wisdom eye had discovered it. All of a sudden, a dragon roar echoed in the dark clouds that were pouring down a shower of rain. This dragon roar was full of majesty, and it directly forced the dark clouds to retreat. It was different from the tyrannical roar of a dinosaur species fey. This dragon roar was very elegant. Following this dragon roar, a long and slender dragon tail emerged from the ink-colored ripples. The dragon's tail was covered with an ink-colored scale armor. The ink-colored scale armor gave off a noble aura. The edge of the scale armor also had a layer of faint dark gold color. The slender dragon tail swung with force and shook the ink-colored ripples. For scaly claws stretched out from the trembling ink-colored ripples, and a large number of thin scales were falling off from the claws like chips. After these thin scales fell off, they revealed the ink-colored scale armor that was similar to the dragon tail on the scaled claws. Another majestic and elegant dragon roar echoed in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, causing the spiritual power in the spirit lock spatial zone to boil like boiling water. The boiling spiritual power made Lin Yuan feel suffocated, and his body also felt a great pressure. Normally, the spirit qi existed in the air and appeared to be very gentle. However, the attacks of all fays in the world were inseparable from the spirit qi itself. Even if it was a battle between fays that relied on physical strength to attack the opponent. It was also due to the spirit qi's subtle enhancement to the physical body. Just as Lin Yuan was about to reach his endurance limit, he felt the pressure vanish. The boiling spirit qi returned to calmness. A 3-meter-long dragon-shaped creature broke through the waves and circled in the air. Lin Yuan saw that the dragon-shaped creature had 2 beautiful ink-colored curved horns on its head, just like 2 ink-colored corals. Its body was vigorous and powerful, and its flying ink-colored mane was suffused with the same dark gold crystal as the edge of the scale armor. A scene suddenly appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. Under the sky, the ink-colored clouds rise and fall on the jade plate. Die the cliff, hold the pillar, and the golden scales appear in the pool. Before Lin Yuan could sigh too much, the dragon-shaped creature twisted its body and coiled around Lin Yuan's neck. The defenseless Lin Yuan was dragged into the spirit pool by the dragon-shaped lifeform that was over 3 meters long. Lin Yuan choked on a few mouthfuls of the spirit pool's water. The dragon-shaped creature immediately knew that it was in trouble again. It hurriedly dove into the water and lifted Lin Yuan out of the spirit pool. Lin Yuan subconsciously used his hand to grab the pair of black coral-like horns on the dragon-shaped creature's head. While holding the horns, Lin Yuan keenly felt the dragon-shaped creature beneath him tremble. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard an abnormally gentle voice. "Master, don't touch the horn. It feels so strange." If Chimi's voice was said to be ethereal, the female voice that echoed out of nowhere was said to be gentle. Lin Yuan suddenly recalled the knowledge that Genius had learned from the Class 3 Fey Observer. A flood dragon species Fey's horn must not be touched easily. Lin Yuan quickly let go of the 2 ink-colored coral-like curved horns and said with pleasant surprise, "Blackie, you can actually speak after becoming a fantasy breed. Blackie, you can actually speak after becoming a fantasy breed." 4th update, reward for World Unparalleled. Seeking monthly votes. Sob, sob, sob. End of this chapter. Chapter 776. Lin Yuan didn't expect that a Fey that had awakened its flood dragon bloodline and transformed into a purebred flood dragon would have such a high increase in intelligence. Blackie might have fused with the willpower rune and become a fantasy breed, but it was still Bronze X. When Lin Yuan had been enhancing Feys, he hadn't thought too highly of the dragon species Fey's bloodline. Lin Yuan had always believed that any Fey would be able to be reborn if it continued to evolve toward its own bloodline. But now, it seemed like there was a reason why the dragon species Fey's bloodline was so sought after. Previously, he had been worried that Blackie, the blue flash purple butterfly, and the jasmine lily would not be able to warn him if there was a problem in the spirit lock spatial zone when Genius and Chimi were not around. The wind speed rapid antelope's intelligence might be enough to warn Lin Yuan about the situation in the spirit lock spatial zone, but Lin Yuan didn't sign a contract with it. Now that he saw Blackie's intelligence, Lin Yuan felt that his previous worries were unnecessary. Red Thorn could now use those giant gill-shaped petals on its body to imitate a human voice and converse. However, it was still rather strenuous for Red Thorn to imitate some unfamiliar syllables. It required a long time to gradually master it. Little Black was able to converse normally now, which meant that Little Black's intelligence was much higher than Red Thorn's. When Blackie heard Lin Yuan's words, it looked at Lin Yuan's wet clothes and said with an aggrieved voice, "Master, Blackie is wrong." Blackie didn't expect Master to become so small. It actually dragged Master into the water after evolving. "Little Black, I didn't expect Master to shrink so much." It actually dragged Master into the water after evolving. When Lin Yuan heard Blackie's words, he immediately felt that he was overthinking. Lin Yuan stared at the 3-meter-long, noble, and elegant Blackie, whose dark golden dragon eyes were filled with grievance, and was rather speechless. What kind of brain circuit could make Xiao He say that it was him who had shrunk? Which part of it was small? How was it small? Could it be that Blackie had a one-track mind? Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check on Blackie's attributes. Fey name, Spirit Tide Black Flood Dragon, Fey species, Horn Dragon/Flood Dragon, Fey grade, Bronze, 10/10, Fey type, Water, Fey quality, Fantasy I abilities Frowny Face Spirit Injection, recover a large amount of the target's spiritual power in one go. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Spirit Chi Imprint, the spirit chi released by the user is not released into the environment. Instead, it is stored in the spirit chi imprint. It can also guide a small amount of spirit chi released by other dragon species Feys that do not exceed the user's grade and inject it into the spirit chi imprint. The aura imprint would be branded on the contractor's body, and the contractor could actively release the aura stored in the aura imprint. Spirit Essence Burst, gather the spirit energy at one point and use this point to burst out all the energy contained in the spirit energy. Spirit Essence Burst is limited to the target of the spirit chi imprint. Through True Data, Lin Yuan knew that Blackie was no longer the original spirit-drawing ichthyosaur but had evolved into the Spirit Tide Black Flood Dragon. Lin Yuan keenly noticed that after Blackie evolved into a Spirit Tide Black Flood Dragon, due to Spirit Lock, its only ability, Spirit Injection, had a change in the data description. The previous, Spirit Injection, restored a portion of the target's spiritual power in one go. After a one-time spiritual power recovery, a small amount of spiritual power would be recovered over time. Now, Spirit Injection directly recovered a large amount of spiritual power, and the recovery of spiritual power was no longer described as a small amount. When Lin Yuan used Blackie's Spirit Injection in the arena battles, the only thing that was useful was Blackie's one-time spiritual power recovery. The small amount of spiritual power that would be recovered over time would only be useful in a protracted battle like Millstone Town. However, as Blackie evolved into a true WIRM species Fey like the Spirit Tide Black Flood Dragon, Blackie's Spirit Injection ability had also improved tremendously. Now that Blackie was a Bronze/Fantasy breed Fey, the improvement of its ability wouldn't be too different from before. However, as Blackie's grade continued to increase, the difference would get bigger. Lin Yuan could clearly feel that Blackie, which had evolved into a Spirit Tide Black Flood Dragon, seemed to be able to control the spirit chi in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Logically speaking, Blackie should be like the other Spirit Siphon Goldfish and release a large amount of spirit chi like the other Spirit Siphon Goldfish in the pool. However, due to Blackie's exclusive skill, the Spirit Chi Imprint, the large amount of Spirit Chi that Blackie released wouldn't be lost in the natural environment. Instead, it would be directly injected into Lin Yuan's Spirit Chi Imprint. Lin Yuan could directly feel that the Spirit Chi Imprint was accumulating Spirit Chi at least 30% faster than before. As for the new exclusive skill that Blackie had comprehended after evolving into a fantasy breed, Lin Yuan couldn't understand it for a moment. Blackie's new exclusive skill, Spirit Essence Burst, was limited to the target that was inscribed with the Spirit Chi Imprint. Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, was inscribed on Lin Yuan's back. As such, only Lin Yuan could use Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Essence Burst, after evolving into a fantasy breed Fey. As for Spirit Essence Burst, it was described by True Data as gathering the spirit chi at a single point and using this point to burst out the condensed spirit chi. Lin Yuan would only know after trying it out. Lin Yuan immediately ordered, "Blackie, use your exclusive skill, Spirit Essence Burst." Subsequently, Lin Yuan raised his fist and released a small amount of spirit chi into his fist. All of a sudden, Lin Yuan felt the spirit qi wrapping around his fist. Although the spirit qi seemed to be wrapping around his fist, the layer of spirit qi was constantly gathering at the tip of his fist. Lin Yuan raised his fist and walked to the workbench before smashing his fist on it. As Lin Yuan had used very little spirit qi, the spirit qi consumed wasn't enough to evolve a normal Fei into an elite Fei. However, it was this little bit of spirit qi that was used by Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Essence Burst, that actually blasted the jade-textured old willow workbench with a single punch. The workbench was originally made by Lin Yuan when he was dismantling the wooden shelves in the Xia region's Fei store. He had used those worthless wooden shelves to put it together. Lin Yuan had been staying in the Spirit Lock spatial zone as a form of remembrance for the past. However, this remembrance had been turned into drifting jade-textured powder by a casual punch. Completely jade-textured wood, especially this kind of thick old willow wood, was extremely stable. Even if a huge force could destroy it, it would just be a crack or a huge pit. It was Lin Yuan's first time seeing an object made of completely jade-textured wood being turned into powder. However, Lin Yuan also understood that such a situation would occur. It meant that when he had just punched, the point where the spirit qi gathered at the tip of his fist had released energy that penetrated into the workbench. The entire workbench had been turned into powder from the inside. The first was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 777. Lin Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air and stared dumbfoundedly at the spiritual ingredients scattered all over the ground because the workbench had turned into smoke powder. The jasmine lily and the blue flash purple butterfly, which had been sleeping soundly on the jasmine lily's bud of mountain jade and had yet to figure out what was going on. Lin Yuan quickly cleaned up the mess on the ground. He planned to ask Hu Quan to make a sturdier workbench after going out. At the same time, Lin Yuan's thoughts were surging violently. Putting aside whether the Spirit Tide Black's exclusive skill, Spirit Purity Burst, was strong or not. Just the effect of Spirit Purity Burst on Lin Yuan was equivalent to making him no longer a Spirit Qi professional who had to constantly pay attention to his life on the battlefield. Instead, he was a humanoid Fei that could strike a fierce blow at a critical moment. This was a real trump card for Lin Yuan. This trump card might be able to play an unexpected role at a critical moment. At the same time, this trump card also greatly increased Lin Yuan's tolerance for mistakes in battle. When nurturing the Source Sand, Lin Yuan had mainly developed the Source Sand's defense. Finally, in the process of strengthening the defense, due to the Source Sand's uniqueness as an elemental source-type life form, the Source Sand had become a link. It allowed the Source Sand to become a link that allowed Lin Yuan's various Feis to effectively link up. Now, with Spirit Purity Burst, as a Spirit Qi professional, Lin Yuan could also become an important member of the linkage. Just now, Lin Yuan had used such a small amount of Spirit Qi to strike, and it could cause such damage. If Lin Yuan mobilized the huge amount of Spirit Qi in the Spirit Qi imprint and let it all gather on his fist, then he would punch it out. Lin Yuan was not sure what kind of lethality it could have. However, based on the power of that blow, Lin Yuan felt that he was very likely to blast an entire mountain into smoke powder. With that thought, Lin Yuan scratched his head awkwardly. I seem to be a little too arrogant. However, through this incident, Lin Yuan deeply understood a sentence that his master, the Moon Empress, always mentioned during the question-and-answer exercise: Spirit Qi is the root of everything. What did it mean? This wasn't just the comprehension of a Class 5 Creation Master's Creation Master ability that was above the clouds. It could be applied to the entire Spirit Qi awakening world. A wisp of weak, nourishing Spirit Qi could also transform into a ferocious beast that could crush everything. The Spirit Tide Ink Flood Dragon's exclusive skill, Spirit Essence Burst, was executed by Lin Yuan. Others would probably feel that Lin Yuan had a strange power. As a Spirit Qi professional, there was probably no one who didn't want to fight alongside their fays and not stand behind them and give orders. However, Lin Yuan, who thought he was righteous but was considered inattributed by the mother of bloodbath, naturally liked the feeling of fighting alongside fays. However, he wanted to treat it as a life-saving trump card. Lin Yuan silently decided that even if he used the spirit herb burst, he would not let others know of his confidence. Lin Yuan was now left with 39 spirit chi crystals. It wasn't enough for the fantasy breed Blackie and the soon-to-be fantasy breed Genius to advance to the gold grade. Furthermore, he had also reached a deal with the Du Immortal Garden. He wanted to use a bronze/legend Fey to exchange for the complete Du Immortal Garden's Law Crystal. Any complete Law Crystal had an unparalleled attraction to him. The sacred source life form, the sacred sword embracing princess, was there. Moreover, Lin Yuan wanted to make his faction stronger. He also needed to let the princess condense more crystals that contained pure power of laws. It could be said that the princess skirt was now dominated by these three complete laws. The remaining fragmented and incomplete laws played a supporting role, and together, they constructed a world that belonged to Luo Kun. Lin Yuan wanted to see what kind of changes would happen if the princess's skirt had more complete laws. To what extent could the princess skirt raise these complete laws through the law source crystals? This was also related to Lin Yuan's strength. He could use the princess's skirts to exert the power of absorbing the laws in those princess's skirts. Lin Yuan was about to go to the Divine Wood Federation. He had also recently read some information about the Divine Wood Federation. The Divine Wood Federation was a federation that worshipped high-level lifeforms. His method, which seemed to only be able to be used as currency, could be converted into actual value in the Divine Wood Federation if used properly. Therefore, in addition to promoting Blackie and Genius, Lin Yuan had to reserve more spirit chi crystals to nurture fays. Even in case of emergencies. After thinking for a while, Lin Yuan made a choice. Lin Yuan decided that no matter how scarce the spirit chi crystals were, he had to evolve the spirit-tied Inky into a gold/fantasy breed first. Although Lin Yuan did not know what kind of changes Genius would have after evolving into a fantasy breed, the spirit-tied Inky could increase the speed of gathering spirit chi in the spirit chi imprint. It was enough for Lin Yuan to evolve the spirit-tied Inky without hesitation. Lin Yuan took the 20 spirit chi crystals and crushed them. He guided the energy in the spirit chi crystals to Blackie. As the spirit-tied Inky could mobilize spiritual power, it could control the spirit chi in a certain range. The spirit-tied Inky flood dragon, Blackie, absorbed the spirit chi in the 20 spirit crystals as it circled around. Under the immense spiritual energy, the spirit-tied Inky black flood dragon let out a noble and elegant dragon roar. Its body expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. During the expansion process, the black scales with dark gold edges slowly lost their luster and finally peeled off. It revealed the new black scales that were like black crystals. The new ink-colored scale armor was already slightly different from the previous one. Each of the new scales had two dark gold dragon patterns on the edge, making them look abnormally noble. However, when Lin Yuan saw Blackie's changes, he got a headache. Blackie, which had just evolved from Bronze X to Silver Eye, had doubled in size and was over 6 meters long. Moreover, with every grade increase, Blackie's body would grow a little. The Silver X/Fantasy Eye Blackie's body was already 9 meters long. Lin Yuan quickly moved Blackie out of the Spirit Lock spatial zone. When a dragon species phase grade increased, there was a constant characteristic. Be it a dinosaur species Fey or a WYRM species Fey, their body would only grow and not shrink. Lin Yuan was really afraid that Blackie, which was already 9 meters long, would rapidly expand after reaching gold and destroy everything that Lin Yuan had meticulously set up in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. It might even affect the hatching floating island whale and the evolving truth sky cloudy crane. When Lin Yuan summoned the evolved Blackie to the room outside the spirit lock spatial zone, Blackie swung its tail and smashed Lin Yuan's big bed into pieces. The second was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 778. Although Blackie had become a purebred flood dragon, it still experienced molting time and time again during the evolution process. Through the contract with Blackie, Lin Yuan could feel that Blackie was about to go crazy from the extreme itch caused by the molting. Therefore, Blackie needed to be released. As a result, the reflection Sun King Lotus on the ground, which had caused an accident in the spirit lock spatial zone, suffered a disaster. After being ruthlessly whipped by Little Black's tail, many of the leaves on the heaven and earth spirit reflecting Sun King Lotus were broken. Lin Yuan hurriedly picked up the reflection Sun King Lotus, which had been unusually pitiful. Previously, because he had been worried about the situation in the spirit lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan had not cared about what had happened to the reflection Sun King Lotus. Now that he looked at it, Lin Yuan's face revealed the same surprised expression as when he had seen Blackie transform into a purebred flood dragon. However, Lin Yuan had already planned to go to the store's fan club to settle the score with Master Duanli later. It turned out that this reflection Sun King Lotus had been split by Master Duanli during the transaction. The twin red pagoda in Lin Yuan's hands was an example. As a heaven and earth fae, the twin red pagoda in Lin Yuan's hands had twins. In order to save a portion of the resources, Master Duanli had secretly separated the twin red pagoda's secondary flower from the main flower. She had kept the secondary flower and given the main flower to Lin Yuan as a collateral. Lin Yuan had not carefully examined the original reflection Sun King Lotus, so he did not know that it had been split. He had thrown the reflection Sun King Lotus in the spirit lock spatial zone spirit pool to nurture. Since Lin Yuan had not been in a hurry to deal with the manor's artificial lake, he had almost forgotten about the reflection Sun King Lotus in the spirit lock spatial zone. When the reflection Sun King Lotus, which had been secretly recuperating in the spirit lock spatial zone, was about to recover, it had been nourished by the spirit lock spatial zone's huge and pure spirit chi. The reflection Sun King Lotus actually wanted to try to grow back its split head. Coincidentally, the reflection Sun King Lotus, which was essentially a succulent plant, had actually mutated in groups when it grew out its head. Lin Yuan counted carefully and found that there were actually 99 young reflection Sun King Lotuses on the newly grown lotus head. Now, Lin Yuan finally knew why the reflection Sun King Lotus could absorb all the spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone. These were 99 young heaven and earth fays that were waiting to be fed and urgently needed the nourishment of spirit chi. Lin Yuan slapped his thigh and looked at the small heads that had grown out of the reflection Sun King Lotus. He could not help but shout in his heart. Lin Yuan stored the reflection Sun King Lotus back into the Fey storage box as though it was a treasure. Lin Yuan did not immediately deal with the King Black Sun King. And Blackie, who had just reached Gold Eye/Fantasy Eye, had successfully destroyed Lin Yuan's room. Due to the broken water pipe in the bathroom, underground water was still gushing out of the bathroom. Lin had black and was Li and Mu black. And had and Yun had and black and had was and black was and the mother of Bloodbath could not understand. It had been a very ordinary spirit-gather goldfish that had only awakened a trace of dragon species bloodline. How did Lin Yuan nurture a spirit-gather goldfish that had awakened a trace of bloodline into a flood dragon species fae with such a pure bloodline? As a fae, the mother of Bloodbath had evolved step by step from an ordinary fae to its current level. It naturally understood the hardships of a phase bloodline evolution. Moreover, it was relatively easy to awaken the bloodline, but it was extremely difficult to purify the bloodline of a dragon species Fae. With such a pure flood dragon species bloodline, the mother of Bloodbath could almost conclude that Black had the possibility of becoming a main dragon species. Before the mother of Bloodbath could lament more about Black's bloodline smell, it felt a kind of convergence and inclusive willpower from Black. Sensing this willpower, the mother of Bloodbath drank the tea in the teacup in one gulp. It turned into the mother of lemons again and started to feel sour. Black's advancement to a fantasy breed meant that Lin Yuan had comprehended at least one willpower rune during this period. How many willpower runes had he comprehended? Even after the new year, Lin Yuan was only a 19-year-old youth. With a noble and elegant dragon roar, Black completely became a gold eye/fantasy eye Fae. However, Black's dragon roar sounded more like an evil dragon's roar to Lin Yuan's ears. After looking at the environment in the room, Lin Yuan knew that he should sleep in the guest room tonight. Even if there was a Class 5 spirit craftsman like Hu Quan in the mansion, he would probably not be able to restore his destroyed room in one afternoon. After successfully advancing, Black subconsciously raised its head and hit the roof of the house. There was a loud duong sound. Lin Yuan's brows twitched wildly when he heard this loud sound. Fortunately, when Wen Yu had commanded the Class 4 architect team to build this old mansion, she had mixed a lot of platinum tungsten steel into the walls. Otherwise, Black's head would have probably appeared in the cultivation room on the 3rd floor after being hit by the roof. Black was now gold eye/fantasy eye, and its body length had reached 18 meters. Among Lin Yuan's many Faes, it could already be considered a behemoth. Lin Yuan had previously looked up a lot of information on flood dragon species Faes on Star Web. It had to be said that Black's appearance was definitely at the top among flood dragon species Faes. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw Little Darkness's golden dragon eyes sweeping around as if it was looking for something. Finally, it landed on Lin Yuan. Then, Lin Yuan heard Black's voice as gentle as water. "Master, why did you become smaller again? You've really become very, very small this time." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan stretched out his fingers and rubbed his temples. Black, this female flood dragon, was a tendon hammer. After saying that, Black's body immediately coiled up. Its 2-meter-long dragon head gently moved to Lin Yuan's side and shook its flying ink-colored mane. It seemed to want to rub against Lin Yuan with its dragon head, but when it saw Lin Yuan's small physique, it gave up its original intention. "Master, Black will take you for a ride." Lin Yuan was slightly startled. He suddenly recalled that after Blackie had become a fantasy breed in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, it had been twisting its body and hovering in the air. Lin Yuan asked as he looked at Little Darkness' golden eyes. "Little Black, you can fly in the sky?" When Blackie heard Lin Yuan's question, it replied as a matter of course. "Of course. As long as there is spiritual chi, be it in the sky or in the water, Blackie can fly. He just got off work. I'll make up for yesterday's 3rd update, and tonight's 3rd update will be posted a little later. Tonight, I must write about the evolution of intelligence, sob sob sob." End of chapter. Chapter 779. At that moment, Lin Yuan waved its silver splendor, which was flying in the air, and exhaled the turbid air in his chest. "Yin Hua, come here." When Yin Hua heard Lin Yuan calling her, she hurriedly flew in front of Lin Yuan. Looking at Lin Yuan's tall nose, Yin Hua stretched out her small hand to support his nose and looked into his eyes at the tip of his nose. Lin Yuan looked at the silver brilliance in front of him and could not help but reveal a sunny smile. Then, he waved his hand and summoned a large number of coral jades in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. "Yin Hua, go take a look at these coral jades. Pick out any coral jades that can increase your insect patterns." When Yinhua heard that, she subconsciously rubbed her face against Lin Yuan's nose bridge and said coldly and shyly, "Master, you are so good to me." Soon after, Yinhua's coral crown glowed with a misty colorful light, and 7 or 8 colorful lotus flowers grew out from her silver hair. The petals of these 7-colored lotus flowers were like fingers picking up the large patches of coral jade on the ground. On the other hand, Silver Splendor's lotus revealed a peaceful smile. The smile was warm, clear, and pure. It was impossible to tell that Silver Flower was a fey born to kill. While Lin Yuan was happy to obtain the silver essence, he also felt a little heavy. In essence, the Silver Flower was now equivalent to Lin Yuan's contracted fey. Lin Yuan was naturally delighted by Silver Splendor's strength, but Silver Splendor's power also shocked him. Silver Splendor's ability was considered destructive even among carcinoma fays, and it could be said to be the king of all carcinoma fays. If Yinhua unscrupulously released her power, it would soon become an uncontrollable disaster. In Lin Yuan's opinion, Silver Splendor's power was no different from a sacred source life form. There was no way the silver essence could compare to a sacred source life form in terms of functionality. However, in terms of increasing the deterrence of war, the Silver Splendor was enough to cause panic in any faction or even in the entire continent. Now that this power was in his hands, he could not help but clench his fists. However, when he thought of Chu Ci, his master, the Moon Empress, Auntie Zhang, Uncle Li, the people in the Return from Faraway Manor, and even the entire Radiance Federation, the heaviness in Lin Yuan's heart disappeared and was replaced by a belief in grasping power. Apart from killing and deterring, power could also protect. What Lin Yuan needed was the power to protect himself. Silver Flower's current ability was already so powerful at bronze, so Lin Yuan could not imagine what it would be like after it became a myth breed. Furthermore, after Silver Flower became a fairy source-type life form, her grade and quality were completely different from before. The sea burial lotus flower could still absorb pure spirit chi to condense sobbing sea crystals, but the sobbing sea crystals would no longer affect the grade and quality of the Silver Splendor. The sea burial lotus flower's main body's sobbing sea crystal could only be considered an instinct. Currently, Silver Splendor and Red Thorn were very similar in terms of rank and quality. However, Red Thorn needed to devour flesh to level up. On the other hand, Silver Splendor absorbed the souls of the living to increase its rank and quality. After returning from the Radiant Moon Palace last time, he had been able to let the ethereal jellyfish activate its tentacles to open a spatial tunnel connecting to the Divine Wood Federation. However, as the underground space had not been completed, and the Nyx assembly was just around the corner, he did not have the time to immediately set off for the Divine Wood Federation to train. Lin Yuan felt that after he connected the spatial tunnel, he still needed to use the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to find a suitable place again. After all, the place that Mystic Moon had chosen for him could not be an area with a large number of low-grade dimensional rifts. In order for Silver Flower to quickly nurture the 36 hidden undead servants, Lin Yuan could not think of any better way than to rely on the dimensional lifeforms that gushed out of the dimensional rifts. Silver Flower quickly finished picking the coral jades. Then, Lin Yuan spread the coral jades that Silver Flower had selected on the open space in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Then, he took out a large batch of coral jades for Yinhua to search for. Coral jades with insect patterns could increase Yinhua's combat ability. Since the coral jades with insect patterns could increase Silver Flower's combat ability, Lin Yuan could make appropriate adjustments to the Spirit Lock spatial zone's location and make more space available for nurturing the coral jades. Ever since Silver Flower hatched, Jin Se had been a little timid. In the face of absolute bloodline suppression, even if Silver Flower showed goodwill to Jin Se still did not dare to have the slightest overstep. Lin Yuan waved his hand at Jin Se to let it land on his palm and said to Jin Se, how many child ramets can you nurture with your exclusive skill? When Jin Sei heard this, he obediently extended a finger. Lin Yuan's brows twitched wildly as he asked in disbelief. 1. Jin Sei shook his head. Lin Yuan guessed again. 10. Jin Sei still shook his head. Jin Sei's shake of the head allowed Lin Yuan to calm down, and Lin Yuan's tone also relaxed. 100. Jin Sei still shook his head. Just as Lin Yuan was about to delightfully guess more things, he heard Jin Sei say obediently, "You're right." "Master," Jin Sei extended a finger, meaning to continue nurturing. Jin Sei can cultivate as many child saplings as he wants. After all, the child stalks are Jin Sei's snacks. Jin Sei inhaled a breath of the pure spirit qi in the spirit lock spatial zone. There's so much spirit qi here for Jin Sei to absorb. Jin Sei doesn't even want to eat those snacks. They're not tasty. Lin Yuan looked at Jin Sei with astonishment. He didn't expect that Jin Sei would actually describe the golden lotus brocade beads as a snack. As for the continuous nurturing that Jin Sei mentioned, Lin Yuan really didn't know what to say. Lin Yuan knew that Jin Sei had misunderstood his meaning, so he asked Jin Sei in a different way. "Jin Sei, how long would it take for you to cultivate a child Ramator that can leave your control?" Jin Sei extended a finger again and said, "About an hour and a half. Just nurturing the snacks until they leave my control, and Jin Sei won't be able to eat them." Lin Yuan reached out and gently pinched Jin Sei's little face. "You little fool, with the spirit qi in the spirit lock spatial zone, why are you still thinking about eating those tasteless snacks? Jin Sei, help me cultivate some child Ramators. The child Ramators you cultivate are very useful to me." When Jin Sei heard this, he nodded with a very happy expression. When Jin Sei had transformed into a fairy source-type life form and hatched, he already had a very high level of intelligence. When he saw Lin Yuan, he treated Lin Yuan as his father and had a very strong attachment to Lin Yuan. However, before Jin Southeast could get close to Lin Yuan, Silver Flower hatched. Silver Flower was born with 6 wings, while Jin Sei was born with 2 wings. This caused Jin Sei to have a bone-deep fear of Silver Flower. This caused Jin Sei to suddenly develop a feeling of inferiority. The second was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 780. At that moment, Chimey was holding a cane loofah in its mouth as it chattered. "Smart, just treat this little melon as red braised pork and eat more. When the time comes, I will have more strength." Genius Snow White Belly was obviously bloated, but it could not bear to reject Chimey. It extended its small claws and grabbed the cane loofah that Chimey was holding in its mouth. Then, it started to chomp on it. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan clenched his fists tightly. Although this evolution was a smart evolution, it was more like a test at the crossroads of life for Lin Yuan. If genius evolution failed, even if Lin Yuan used a lot of money to buy all the 100 questions beasts in the world and nurture them one by one, genius would never be able to evolve. He had trained those 100 questions beasts to be intelligent. By choosing the 100 questions beast, which had the same personality as genius, it would be able to experience everything that Lin Yuan and genius had experienced. He had obtained a 100 questions beast that could replace genius, but this 100 questions beast wasn't the genius that Lin Yuan had relied on when it was weak. Therefore, even if he had to do his best, he had to ensure that genius could successfully evolve. When Chimey and genius saw that Lin Yuan had returned to the spirit lock spatial zone, it flapped its wings and flew to Lin Yuan's ear. Chimey was very worried about genius' situation and wanted to gain some confidence from Lin Yuan. However, when Chimey saw Lin Yuan's expression, it calmed down. He did not want to increase Lin Yuan's burden because of his worries. Genius strode resolutely to Lin Yuan's leg and spoke in a childish voice. "Lin Yuan, genius is ready." Lin Yuan looked deeply at Genius and gritted his teeth as he spoke in an abnormally solemn tone. Go, Song Ming. I'll stay here with you. After saying that, he summoned the willpower rune that contained infinite knowledge and wisdom. When Genius saw Lin Yuan summoning the willpower rune, it immediately stomped its hind legs. Without Lin Yuan's guidance, it took the initiative to pounce on this law rune that contained knowledge and wisdom. After fusing with the willpower rune, Genius landed on the ground. Its body glowed with a faint luster, making Genius' fur look softer and its blue eyes brighter. Genius shook its little head and looked at Lin Yuan and Chimey with a doubtful and childish voice. Lin Yuan, Song Ming doesn't hurt. Before Genius could finish its sentence, the three tails behind it exploded into a bloody mist. Immediately after, Genius' snow-white fur spewed out a layer of bright red blood mist, as if something had exploded in Genius' body. Genius had already made a decision. No matter how painful it is, I have to endure it and not scream out. I don't want Lin Yuan and Chimey to worry. But because he had relaxed a little, he had suffered such a serious injury. It couldn't help but let out a mournful meow. When looking at Genius' current appearance, Lin Yuan's eyes turned blood red. Lin Yuan activated Morbius' exclusive skill, Pure Land of Bliss, and its radiance enveloped Genius, helping Genius heal its damaged roots. He then ordered the Platinum I/Fantasy 3 Jasmine Lily to use the bud of Mountain Jade to heal Genius. The weakest part of a feline fae was its tail. It was an extremely unbearable pain for feline fays to have their tails gently pulled. However, Genius's three tails exploded on its body. As the blood mist spewed out from Genius' body, Genius' originally white and soft fur was also stained with blood. Through the contract with Genius, Lin Yuan could feel a portion of Genius' pain. When Lin Yuan slightly experienced this pain, he felt that every hair on his body was trembling. However, all of this was just the beginning for Genius. After Genius let out the first scream, it used its willpower to suppress the scream in its throat. It only let out a gulp, gulp, gulp sound like a bellow. Upon seeing that Genius was trying its best to endure, Lin Yuan couldn't help but yell at Genius. Genius, cry out if it hurts. Don't endure it. Chimey, which had always been the noisiest in Lin Yuan's ears, was now the quietest. However, Chimey's nimble bird eyes were staring at Genius, and the fur beside its eyes had become a little moist. When Genius heard Lin Yuan's yell, it stopped enduring and let out a miserable scream. Genius' evolution was different from Chimey's evolution. Chimey was evolving its bloodline. Even if Chimey's body was crushed, with the power of its bloodline, Chimey's body wouldn't collapse. Even if Chimey lost consciousness, its evolution would continue. However, this wasn't the case for Genius. Lin Yuan realized that Genius didn't stimulate its bloodline during the process of evolving into a fantasy breed. Instead, it was constantly strengthening Genius' spiritual energy. The strengthening of spiritual energy allowed Genius to constantly maintain a clear-headed state. In fact, during the process of strengthening spiritual energy, Genius' spiritual energy would become even more sensitive, which would increase the pain that Genius felt. Through the contract, Lin Yuan could sense that Genius' injuries were constantly worsening, so he didn't hesitate to open his Vitality imprint and Spirit Chi imprint. Since Genius' bloodline wasn't strengthened, its physique wasn't strengthened either. Lin Yuan had to ensure that the Jasmine Lily's heal and Morbius exclusive skill, Pure Land of Bliss, could replenish the vitality in Genius' body. If Genius was a bucket that was constantly leaking water, Lin Yuan would be a faucet that was constantly pouring water. Even if he couldn't keep Genius's bucket at a full state, he must not let the water in Genius's bucket run dry. Once the water ran dry, Genius would die. Gradually, Genius' evolution into a fantasy breed became a tug-of-war. Lin Yuan could sense that Genius' spiritual energy was improving qualitatively with every passing second. However, Lin Yuan couldn't feel happy at all. During these 2 hours, in order to maintain genius vitality, Lin Yuan had already made the jasmine lily operate at maximum horsepower. Even though the spirit qi in Lin Yuan's spirit qi imprint was still sufficient, the vitality energy in the vitality imprint was almost depleted. This made Lin Yuan anxious. The jasmine lily's healing of genius couldn't stop. Once it stopped, all previous efforts would be wasted. What Lin Yuan needed to do now was to replenish the vitality energy in the vitality imprint. Upon seeing Lin Yuan's expression, Chimey couldn't help but ask, "Lin Yuan, your brows are knitted even tighter. Lin Yuan, you're frowning even more. Isn't it bad to be smart?" Lin Yuan replied, "The vitality energy in the vitality imprint isn't enough." Lin Yuan replied, "The vitality energy in the vitality imprint isn't enough." Second update. First update. Try to release it at 12 p.m. sharp. End of this chapter. Chapter 781. After speaking, Lin Yuan was prepared to give an order to the jasmine lily. He ordered the jasmine lily to use its main flower to perform heal on itself and extract vitality from its body to store it in the spirit qi imprint. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw Chimey flying. First, he cast sunlight ray on the jasmine lily, increasing its vitality. Then, Chimey let out an extremely beautiful chirp. After that, it turned from a blue bird into a swan with golden feathers and a long tail. As it flapped its wings, a sun wheel was set up on the stars between its wings. Chimey said to Lin Yuan anxiously, "Lin Yuan, extract the vitality from my body." Upon hearing Chimey's words, Lin Yuan knew that it was using the gold absolute melody, nirvana melody. At that moment, Chimey was burning all the vitality in its body and only retained a trace of vitality in the sun wheel that rose from its wings. However, Chimey did not convert the burning vitality into sunlight energy. Instead, it allowed the burning vitality to appear on the surface of its body. After using the absolute melody, nirvana melody, the burning vitality would quickly dissipate if it was not used in time. Lin Yuan naturally would not let down Chimey's affection for genius. He immediately gave an order to the jasmine lily. "Jasmine lily, use the crystallization main flower to perform heal on Chimey." When the jasmine lily heard Lin Yuan's command, a red energy beam landed on Chimey's body. A large amount of vitality was extracted from Chimey's body, and Lin Yuan could feel the vitality in the spirit qi imprint on his forehead constantly increasing. Soon, the Platinum I/Fantasy 3 Jasmine Lily extracted all the vitality from Chimey's body. Lin Yuan commanded the Jasmine Lily to continue to extract vitality from Chimey's body and pour it into Genius's body. When the Jasmine Lily used the crystallization main flower to perform heal, it had no limits. Lin Yuan was unable to determine how much vitality the Jasmine Lily was extracting from reverse heal. Thanks to Chimey's absolute melody, nirvana melody was able to retain a trace of vitality. Otherwise, if the Jasmine Lily was allowed to absorb the vitality of other fays without any scruples, it might take the other fays' lives. Chimey had already recovered from the extreme bliss of reverse heal. The sun wheel on his back shattered, turning into a handful of starlight that scattered into Chimey's body. Only then did it stop Chimey's falling body. Chimey flapped its wings weakly and floated in the air. Then, it used light cleansing to recover its lost vitality. At the same time, Chimey, which had just recovered a little of its energy, said firmly to Lin Yuan, "Lin Yuan, give me 5 minutes, and bathing light will be able to replenish more than half of the life force in my body. At that time, I'll be able to use the absolute nirvana sound skill again. Then you will extract the life force from my body and give it to Genius." When Lin Yuan heard the emotions in Chimey's words, he knew that Chimey did not care about the impact of continuously using the gold ultimate melody, nirvana melody, on its roots. Lin Yuan couldn't help but think of the three good-for-nothings in the Xia region's Fei store, who would stick together no matter what. Eat together, work together, shower together, sleep together. They depended on each other to face the bitterness of life together. But no matter how many difficulties there were, life was still difficult. As long as the three good-for-nothings leaned against each other and slept together, the next day, the world would still be spring, bright and tranquil. Not only did this feeling not change, but it had also become even more sincere. Once a contract was formed between a Fei and a contractor, they would be the most intimate partners. However, it wasn't the case between the contractor's contracted Feis. There were plenty of times when a contractor's contracted Feis developed spirit intelligence, and there would be discord between them. However, it wouldn't be a big deal if a spirit chi professional mediated, and there wouldn't be much of an impact. Take Blackie as an example. If Blackie was here, Lin Yuan wouldn't need to seek its consent and could let the jasmine lily extract its vitality. However, if Lin Yuan were to ask Blackie for its opinion, it would mean that it wasn't for itself but for genius. Little Black might not be willing to do that. However, Chimy's current actions were the same as using its own life to save genius' life. This meant that in Chimy's world, genius was at least equal to its own life. It was even more important than its own life. Not long after Chimy's voice faded away, the bloody tug-of-war fortunately came to an end with a meow from genius. Lin Yuan felt genius' aura suddenly change. Genius' bloody body might be in a sorry state, but it was emitting a mystical aura that belonged to genius. Lin Yuan noticed that genius' blue eyes were even more penetrating than before. Through those blue eyes, Lin Yuan felt as though he could vaguely see the truth of the world. Genius was currently shaking its bloody fur. These bloody hairs fell off genius' body as it swung its body. It revealed a layer of fur that was as delicate and soft as milk. After the bloody fur fell off, genius' body's mystical aura instantly reached its peak. 4 fluffy tails grew out from genius' back in the blink of an eye. As he looked at the 4 new tails behind genius, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that they were more like cat's tails. It was more like a fox's tail. After genius evolved, its body didn't grow bigger and was still the size of a kitten. However, the long tails on its back were as long as 2 of genius's bodies. Genius shook off the last bit of blood on its body and leaped into Lin Yuan's embrace. Lin Yuan caught genius and hugged it tightly. Chimy dragged its weak body to Lin Yuan's arm and used its hand to peck at it. Lin Yuan's arm relaxed slightly, and Chimy used its strength to burrow between Lin Yuan's arm and genius. Only a small head could be seen, and the feathers on the head were sticking up. Chimy gently closed its eyes. The water vapor on the feathers near its eyes had yet to dry. But there was an indescribable sense of happiness in the bird's eyes. Genius laid in Lin Yuan's embrace and felt that the unforgettable memory that was engraved in its mind was soothed by the pain that caused its entire body to tremble. To Genius, wherever Lin Yuan was, it was home. Lin Yuan's embrace was the warmest place in the world. Genius said softly in Lin Yuan's embrace. Lin Yuan, after Genius evolved, it can no longer remember as many as 30 pieces of red braised meat. Genius can now remember all the red braised meat in the world. Lin Yuan's lips curled up. Genius was still the little foodie that could describe everything as red braised meat. Lin Yuan subconsciously lowered his head to look at Genius, but when he saw Genius, his eyes immediately turned sluggish. Genius's name was no longer the 100 Questions Beast but the Interconnected Beast. However, Genius's name wasn't what shocked and sluggish Lin Yuan. It was Genius's exclusive skill after evolving into a fantasy breed. Previously, Lin Yuan's most precious strategic resource was the floating island whale that had yet to hatch from its crystal eggshell. Now that Genius had evolved into the interconnected beast, the strategic significance of its new exclusive skill was on par with the floating island whale. Third, I got off work at 6:30 p.m. and sat until 12 o'clock p.m. without lifting my butt. If everyone likes to watch it, please give button more monthly votes and recommendation votes. Please support button. I love you. Boo-hoo, button is going to sleep. I'm so sleepy. Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams. End of this chapter. Chapter 782. Just as Lin Yuan was lamenting the strategic significance of Genius' new exclusive skill after becoming a fantasy breed, Genius' childish voice continued to speak. Lin Yuan, Genius can now not only remember the world's red braised pork. Moreover, as long as the red braised pork in the world is placed in front of Genius, it will be able to finish it very quickly. Upon hearing Genius' words, Lin Yuan let go of Genius. Lin Yuan placed Genius on his shoulder and was about to scratch Genius' little nose. He realized that Chimey had fallen asleep in the crook of his arm. Not only had Chimey used its gold skill, Nirvana Sound, but it had also been in a tense state during the few hours of tug-of-war that Genius had experienced to evolve into a fantasy breed. Chimey was indeed tired. At that moment, Chimey's mind relaxed. As its body was too weak, it entered a deep slumber. Lin Yuan gently held Chimey in his palm and placed it on Genius' back. He then stretched out his hand and scratched the tip of Genius' nose. Smart, you have to thank Chimey for successfully advancing into a fantasy breed. When Lin Yuan placed Chimey on Genius' back, Genius used its 4 huge and fluffy tails to gently cover Chimey's body. During the process of evolution, Genius' mental power was always in a clear state, so it could naturally remember everything that happened. Genius said to Lin Yuan with a slightly dejected tone. But even after Genius evolved, it still couldn't protect Chimey. As Genius spoke, Lin Yuan sensed a massive and pure spiritual energy condensing in Genius' crystal-clear blue eyes. Genius gently waved its little claws, and 2 hands condensed from mental strength condensed beside Genius. It trembled as it lifted an aquamarine elemental shellfish that was producing elemental pearls. The aquamarine elemental shellfish was so frightened that it immediately closed its shell. Coincidentally, an elemental pearl that rolled out got stuck in the middle of the shell and made a crisp sound. Genius hurriedly placed the aquamarine elemental shellfish back to its original position. Lin Yuan, Genius doesn't seem to have become very powerful after evolving. It still can't help Lin Yuan fight the bad guys. When Genius spoke, there was a hint of sorrow on its face. Genius looked at its snow-white claws and the pink pads on its palms, feeling depressed about how weak it was when it was advancing into a fantasy breed. Lin Yuan was shocked by the smart operation, or rather, the smart operation shocked him once again. Genius' use of spiritual energy could be said to have subverted his understanding of spiritual energy. Psychic attacks were usually only effective against one's mind. No matter how powerful a Fey was, the target of a spiritual ability would not be the opponent's body. It could be said that mental power was a power that was outside of the physical world. However, Genius was able to condense its mental power into a palm. It did not just target mental power. Instead, it brought the spiritual energy from the spiritual plane into reality. If this matter were to be made known to the outside world, it would probably cause a huge commotion among the 5-star scholars. Genius's careless action had completely overturned the research that 5-star scholars had done on mental strength in the past century. Lin Yuan looked at Genius with a serious expression. Smart. Look into my eyes. When Genius heard Lin Yuan's words, it withdrew its gaze from its pink pads. He looked up and met Lin Yuan's gaze. When Genius saw Lin Yuan's serious expression, it also became serious. Lin Yuan looked at Genius and revealed a bright smile on his stern and serious face. Lin Yuan used his hand to rub Genius' head. Smart. True strength is never just reflected in martial strength. Knowledge is power. Genius isn't weaker than anyone else. In fact, you are much stronger than others. When Lin Yuan said this, he didn't have any intention to comfort Genius. In fact, Lin Yuan felt that what he said wasn't enough to express the power of Genius' exclusive skill after evolving into the fantasy breed interconnected beast. Genius and Lin Yuan were spiritually connected, so it naturally felt that Lin Yuan's words were sincere. The melancholic expression on Genius' face instantly vanished, and it was so happy that its cat ears perked up. Its two cute little ears were constantly twitching, showing the joy in Genius' heart. Genius still felt that it was very weak in its heart. If it were to fight with other Fays, even if Genius was already a Bronze X/Legend Fay, any random Silver X Fay would be able to defeat Genius. However, Genius wanted to become stronger purely because it wanted to be able to help Lin Yuan. Since Lin Yuan felt that it was strong, Genius didn't care if it felt that it was strong or not. To Genius, Lin Yuan's affirmation was the best thing in the world. Lin Yuan pointed at the jasmine lily and used the bud of mountain jade to use heal on Chimey again. Chimey fell into a deep sleep on Genius' back and was recovering its depleted life force. Due to the Nirvana sound retaining a trace of Chimey's life force, the sleeping Chimey didn't use light cleansing on itself. According to this recovery speed, Chimey might not even wake up tomorrow. With the jasmine lily replenishing Chimey's depleted life force, Chimey opened its eyes on Genius' back in just a short moment. Once it opened its eyes, Chimey smelled the familiar scent on Genius' body and stretched its back in satisfaction. Immediately after, Chimey felt as though it had a nightmare while half asleep. It immediately spread its wings and flew up. Upon seeing that Genius was lying on Lin Yuan's shoulder in perfect condition, Chimey heaved a sigh of relief. Chimey flew to the tip of Genius' nose and pecked it while chirping, "Stupid Genius. You made Lin Yuan and I worry about you for a few hours." If Genius had lost consciousness during the evolution process, it would have gone through a near-death experience to complete its evolution. However, it would definitely feel sad when its cherished companion said this. However, Genius was clear-headed and knew what Chimey had sacrificed for it. Now that it heard Chimey's reproachful worry and relief, it felt a warm feeling in its heart. When Lin Yuan looked at Genius and Chimey, the biggest rock in his heart finally fell to the ground. Even if this rock fell to the ground, Lin Yuan would still have lingering fear whenever he thought of the pain Genius had endured. However, everything was over. Genius might not have evolved its bloodline, but it still preserved the 100 Questions Beast's bloodline. However, Genius' spiritual energy had a qualitative leap. If Lin Yuan didn't have a contract with Genius and knew that Genius had evolved from the 100 Questions Beast, Lin Yuan wouldn't have been able to sense Genius' pure and massive spiritual energy. Just by sensing Genius' pure and massive spiritual energy, Lin Yuan would have felt that Genius was a rare spiritual life form that was formed from spiritual energy. First, end of this chapter. Chapter 783. At that moment, the Blade Bat was successfully promoted to bronze after being nourished by the Dream-Eating Bat's essence blood. During the promotion process, its bloodline underwent a series of transformations. It mutated from the original Blade Bat to the Edge Blade Bat, Umbra Blade Bat, and finally to the Edge Shadow Bat. The Edge Shadow Bat had been promoted from Elite/Epic to Bronze. Thus, after the promotion, it had 3 exclusive skills. Edge Shattering Shadow: when attacking, the wing blades will shatter while slashing the target, turning the original lacerations on the target into area of effect slashing damage. Bat Fang Blood Species: the Edge Shadow Bat injects the venom hidden in its teeth into the target's body, allowing the target to be affected by the venom and turn into a blood slave. Bat Ritual Burial: burn the blood in the body and allow the body's strength to break through the limit in a short time. Once the blood is burned, the body will enter a near-death state due to the depletion of blood. After seeing the information of these 3 exclusive skills, Lin Yuan didn't even think before choosing the Bat Fang blood species for the Edge Shadow Bat. Edge Shattering Shadow mainly relied on the attack power of the Edge Shadow Bat's wing blades. It turned from a blade into a meat grinder in the target's body and could indeed cause multiple times the damage. It could even blast a large hole in the target's body, allowing the crushed parts to flow out of the hole. The exclusive skill Edge Shattering Shadow could indeed increase the Edge Shadow Bat's wing blade's destructive power. However, this destructive power had to be built on the wing blade's original attack effect. It could be said to be useless in a cross-grade battle as it was like drawing legs on a snake. After all, whether the exclusive skill Edge Shattering Shadow could be used depended on whether the blade could break through the defense. The third exclusive skill, Bat Ritual Burial, was a suicidal attack that burned the blood as the price. Once Bei Su used this method, it was the same as crippling the Edge Shadow Bat. In a near-death state, the Edge Shadow Bat couldn't use its Bat Fang suck to recover its injuries. Therefore, he had no choice but to choose the Bat Fang blood species. The Bat Fang blood species was indeed capable, allowing Bei Su, a loner in the Rock Continent's underground world, to have a method to control other spirit chi professionals. This method was extremely necessary for Bei Su. In the underground world, where blood and betrayal coexisted, Bei Su might have just taken in a few underlings before he closed his eyes and took a nap. His exclusive skill, the Bat-Toothed blood species, completely eliminated Bei Su's worries. The Shadow Edge Bat had perfect control over the blood slaves transformed from the Bat-Fanged blood species. It could even extract the life force of the blood slaves to heal itself when it was injured in battle. Even if Bei Su's blood slaves weren't strong in the early stages, they could still be used as mobile medical kits. That alone made the Bat-Fanged bloodline worthwhile. He used True Data to carefully check the Bronze Sharp Shadow Bat's data and found that its normal and elite abilities had been strengthened qualitatively. Fey name, Sharp Shadow Dark Bat, Spirit Species, Toothed Bat/Horseshoe Bat, Fey grade, Bronze, 1/10, Fey type, Dark, Fey quality, normal skills Frowny Face Wing Shadow Blade, by waving the wings, the blade will appear in the form of a shadow. Sucking Bat Swarm, summons a swarm of bats made up of a large number of shadows and uses the bats to suck on the target. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Bat-Toothed blood species, the Sharp Shadow Dark Bat injects the toxins hidden in its teeth into the target's body, allowing the target's bloodline to completely transform into a blood slave. Now that the Blade Bat had evolved into the Sharp Shadow Dark Bat, it had changed from a close combat Fey to a long-range Fey that used the shadows. The normal ability had evolved from Wing Shadow Blade to Wing Shadow Blade, and it would undoubtedly be more agile in battle. At the same time, the long-range attacks would also reduce the chances of the Sharp Shadow Dark Bat getting injured. Lin Yuan was very surprised that the Elite Bat Swarm Suck had evolved into the Sucking Bat Swarm. Originally, the Sucking Bat Swarm Suck wasn't of much help in battle as the Blade Bats needed to kill the target before they could absorb the target's blood. In fact, it didn't mean that the Blade Bats had to kill the target before they could use the Sucking Bat's Bat Swarm Suck. It was because the Blade Bats had to attach themselves to the target when using the Sucking Bat Swarm Suck. When the bat fangs pierced into the target's body and sucked the blood, it was difficult to move and would be easily attacked. It was safer to kill the target before sucking the blood. Now, the Sucking Bat Swarm Suck completely avoided this point and became a skill that could be used in battle. The Sucking Bat Swarm Suck could summon a large number of bats made of shadows during battle. While the bats made of shadows used their sharp bat fangs to attack the target, they could also suck the target's blood to recover. Lin Yuan looked at the Sharp Shadow Dark Bat that he had nurtured using the Pinnacle Suzerain/Myth 2 Dream-Eating Bat's essence blood and nodded with satisfaction. At the same time, he couldn't help but lament the massive upgrade to abilities from the Phase Bloodline evolution. Then, Lin Yuan called Genius down from the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branch again and asked Genius to help concoct the spirit fluid that could allow the sharp shadow dark bat to evolve. Lin Yuan also started to enhance the bronze/normal sharp shadow dark bat. He was prepared to spend one day to upgrade the sharp shadow dark bat from normal to legend. Lin Yuan had invested so much in Bei Su because he had seen Bei Su's life through Bei Su's will and felt that Bei Su was very similar to the time when he had brought Chu Ci to survive. They had the same unyielding hard work and still had hope and anticipation for the future in adversity. On the other hand, it was also because Lin Yuan had the ambition to let Sky City cover the other continents. However, Lin Yuan's current ability was not enough to support his ambition. Bei Su, who had joined the Celestial Council, could basically be equivalent to Lin Yuan's arm and help him spread Sky City's seeds to the other continents. In summary, Bei Su was worthy of Lin Yuan devoting resources like the pinnacle myth 2 dream-eating bat's essence blood. Genius and Lin Yuan were concocting the spirit fluid, while Genius was enhancing the sharp shadow dark bat's quality. Chimey continued to live stream between the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches. At that moment, Chimey was looking at the bullet comments in the live streaming room and softly interacting with the audience. Ever since Chimey could speak, it felt that live streaming was much more interesting than before. It no longer had to ask Genius to help it type when it saw the bullet comments like before. Even though Chimey's singing talent was maxed out and it now had good intelligence, it still felt that it did not know where to start controlling the live streaming room's functions. When Chimey was answering the bullet comments, it saw that there were bullet comments from time to time saying that they wanted to see it PK with other star web streamers, so it was slightly tempted. Chimey's small brain could not help but wonder if it would be fun to PK with other streamers. Chapter 3. End of this chapter. Chapter 784. Bai Hao could be said to be a frequent visitor to the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's live streaming room. Ever since Bai Hao had accidentally discovered the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's live streaming room, he had occupied the top spot on the leaderboard. In the following period of time, Bai Hao was also pushed down from the first position by the rank 2. But when Bai Hao found out about it, he would give out a lot of gifts and return to his first place on the list. These days could be said to be the happiest days of Bai Hao's life. During this period of time, the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess had basically been live streaming every day. She had also started to talk and interact with the bullet screen. A person's singing voice is often different from his speaking voice. Bai Hao was a seasoned vocalist. He had been fascinated by the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's singing voice from the beginning. However, the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's singing seemed to have a magical power. Ever since Bai Hao heard the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's singing, he found other people's singing boring. However, after hearing the voice of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess, Bai Hao became even more infatuated with it. Compared to the ethereal singing of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess, the voice of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess was undoubtedly more realistic and lively, which Bai Hao liked more. Bai Hao preferred listening to the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess speak rather than listen to the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess sing. Therefore, Bai Hao, who did not usually speak in the live streaming channel, had recently started to interact with the bullet screen like crazy. All so that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess could see his message and say a few words to him while she was singing. As a Radiance 100 sequence member, Bai Hao's guild club was a star guild in the S tournament, so his every move would naturally be watched by everyone. Bai Hao openly used his star web account to be a fan of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess, causing Bai Hao's exclusive reporter to feel miserable. Bai Hao's personal star web reporters contacted him several times, hoping that he could clarify his relationship with the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess. However, she did not expect that not only did Bai Hao not want to clarify, but he even publicly admitted that he was the #1 fan of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess. This made Baihao's exclusive reporter feel overwhelmed even if he worked overtime day and night. When Baihao heard the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's new song, he quickly sent a string of bullet screen comments. Ranger Baihao, Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess, go and PK with other star web streamers. With me here, you won't lose no matter who you PK with. Chimey originally had the thought of PK after seeing the bullet screen comments from the audience. Now that Baihao mentioned PK again and promised that he wouldn't lose no matter what, it spoke up. Alright, since that's the case, I'll have a PK. But how should I do it? Chimey had never understood the functions of the live streaming room. Now, even if it wanted to PK, it didn't know what to do. Hearing the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess voice, the viewers in the live stream channel were almost melted by the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess voice. The goddess who could sing so well actually had an adorable attribute. She was simply too cute. Chimey looked at the comments in the live streaming room and finally found the PK button with great difficulty. Chimey pressed the PK button without hesitation. Chimey, who had just pressed the PK button, suddenly shivered. It recalled what Genius had said. As long as it wasn't in its own live streaming room, the GIF function on its face would disappear when it went to other live streaming rooms. In order to allow the viewers of the two live streaming rooms to watch the live streaming on the same channel, the Star Web PK would merge the original live streaming rooms of the two hosts to form a new live streaming room. At the thought of this, Chimey immediately logged out of its Star Web account. After logging out of its Star Web account, Chimey used its wings to pat its chest and thought to itself. That was close. I, the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess, reacted fast enough. Otherwise, would have screwed up. However, Chimey didn't know that once the Star Web PK started, it wouldn't be interrupted. Even if one side logged out or went offline, it would be fixed on the scene when it logged out. When Chimey entered the Star Web PK, it was at the trunk of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Behind it were 100 phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree leaves that contained mid-grade extraordinary flames. The golden leaves were mixed with 100 different colors of flames, as though they were flickering with 100 rays of light in the sun. At that moment, apart from the magnificent background, the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's live streaming room also had a lively luan bird in the corner of the screen. When Chimey was live streaming on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree, it was absorbing the energy transmitted from the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree, causing it to not enter its usual mimicry state. Upon seeing such a scene, the viewers in the live streaming room were stunned, and the comments started to flood the screen in a frenzy. The viewers in the opposite live streaming room were the first to react. Lost Moral Gentleman, what's going on? What's the opposite live streamer doing? Is it stuck or disconnected? What's going on with live streamers in the attractive section showing off their pets? Half man half ghost, fuck, what's going on with the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess? Why is it stuck? And why can't I see the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess on the screen? Amber Button, let me ask, don't tell me this bird has always been live streaming? Shadow Hacker, upstairs, you must be retarded. The songstress bird is the best singing fae at present, but can the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's song be comparable to the songstress birds? Amethyst, I have a guess, but I don't know if I should say it. Shadow, oh my god, let me say it. Don't you think that bird fae looks familiar? Blue Wind and Rain, oh my god. If you didn't say it, I wouldn't have realized it. Isn't that bird fae the one that Black revealed during the Celestial Stairway duels? Three Little Cucumbers. Previously, many people were guessing why the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess only followed Black when there were so many people on Star Web. Now, I finally know. Don't tell me the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess and Black know each other now. Otherwise, why didn't the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess remove all her followers after giving her so much money? Although the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess had gone offline, the duels were still going on. The scene started to become more and more chaotic. For a moment, a large number of Star Web reporters and spectators swarmed into the live streaming room to participate in this big news. During this period, the most mysterious live streamer on Star Web was the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess. With the end of the All-Star Duel, Chu Xi and Lin Yuan's performances were outstanding. In addition, Lin Yuan's strength and identity were even more mysterious. He was like a top expert of the younger generation that had appeared out of thin air. Lin Yuan looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, which matched Star Web's guess of Black's age. This caused many people to compare Black and Lin Yuan together. It just so happened that Black had been very low-key apart from occasionally participating in 2 celestial stairway duels in the past month. Black's exclusive reporter, Tian Ningning, would only occasionally write a few battle records about Black's celestial stairway duels on Star Web. She did not report anything else. On one hand, this slightly decreased Black's popularity. On the other hand, it also made Black's existing fans more curious about Black's situation. Now that the bird Fae in the live streaming room was exposed, Black, who had been low-key recently, was connected to the most popular live streamer on Star Web, Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess. It became the hottest news on Star Web overnight. Chapter 3 Sad Face. End of this chapter. Chapter 785. Even the popularity of the S-Tournament semi-finals lucky draw was suppressed by the news of the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess and Black. At the moment, Bai Hao was the most conflicted person in the live stream channel. On the one hand, Bai Hao was conflicted about the relationship between the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess and Black. In the past 6 months, the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess had become Bai Hao's spiritual support. As long as he could not see the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess's live broadcast, Bai Hao would not be able to muster up any energy. Although Bai Hao had always been single, he understood what feelings were. He knew that in his current situation, he had fallen in love with the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess just because of her voice. Even if Bai Hao was not sure about the relationship between the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess and Black, the fact that Black's Fae had appeared beside the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess proved that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess and Black were very close. This caused Bai Hao to feel very uncomfortable. On the other hand, what made Bai Hao more excited was that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess had been stuck during a duel with another streamer. This proved that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess was not averse to live streaming with her face exposed. Among all the live streamers on Star Web, it was the hardest for live streamers to survive in the attractive section. Since the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess was not averse to showing her face in the attractive section, it was obvious that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess did not look bad. Moreover, it was very likely that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess would fight again in the live stream. He still had a chance to see the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess' true appearance. In Bai Hao's opinion, the fact that the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess and Black knew each other had given him a channel to get to know the Sparrow Voice Lowly Goddess offline. It was said that Black was going to participate in the Radiance 100 Sequences test this year. Given the strength he had displayed in the Celestial Stairway duel, entering the Radiance 100 sequence was a sure thing. At that time, he and Black would both be members of the Radiance 100 sequence. Bai Hao believed that if he asked Black to help him create an opportunity for his fan and idol to meet offline, Black should not reject it. At that moment, Lin Yuan was enhancing the Sharp Shadow Dark Bat. Upon seeing Chimey fly over and land on his ear obediently without making a fuss, Lin Yuan felt a little strange. When Lin Yuan let Chimey land on his wrist, he immediately realized that when Chimey looked at him, it would subconsciously look in another direction as though it had a guilty conscience. This made Lin Yuan a little confused, as he did not know what was wrong with Chimey. However, he did not think too much about it. However, what Lin Yuan did not know was that his exclusive reporter, Tian Ningning, had already gone crazy. She was repeatedly sending messages to the Star Web account that hacked his identity. Day and night were the same on the cavern continent. Only at noon would a bit of sunlight shine through the underground world of the cavern continent. In the eyes of the living beings on the cave continent, the few hours where sunlight seeped through the underground world was a blessing from the heavens. Noon was the warmest time of the day in the underground world of the cave continent. A young man that looked like a little beast was crawling in a pile of broken rocks. The youth's expression was resolute, but the sand on his face that was scratched made him look rather miserable. The disheveled young man was holding a stone awl in his hand as he stared at a huge brown beetle chewing on moss not far away from the pile of broken rocks. Bei Su held the stone awl in one hand and placed the other on his stomach, pressing his stomach tightly into his abdomen. In order to prevent the rumbling sound of the empty stomach from disturbing the giant brown beetle that was eating the moss, he had to keep the empty stomach from making any noise due to hunger. Bei Su thought to himself, "I'm really lucky today. There's actually a crabworm that came near the pile of rocks I built. Looks like I won't have to go hungry today." Otherwise, if he continued to starve, Bei Su was afraid that he would faint from hunger and would not be able to enter the Celestial Council at the appointed time. It could be said that the Celestial Council was the only hope that Bei Su could see in the underground world. In the past few days, Bei Su could not help but think of the godlike man that was surrounded by numerous laws and wills. He was looking forward to meeting this godlike man again. Bei Su looked at the crabworm's stomach that was becoming more and more swollen after eating a large amount of moss. He rushed out of the pile of broken rocks. But when Bei Su rushed out of the pile of broken rocks, he immediately clenched his teeth because of his injury. At this time, Bei Su's calf had a wound that was nearly 20 centimeters long. Although Bei Su had tied up the wound with a rock board and hemp strips, it was still not enough. Although Bei Su had used a stone board and hemp strips to tie up the wound, a dark red color seeped out of the hemp strips and quickly soaked the thick hemp strips. Bei Su did not care about the injury on his leg and leaped towards the side of the crabworm. He raised the stone awl in his hand and fiercely stabbed at the fragile neck of the crabworm, which was exposed due to the moss on the ground. But the stone awl did not directly pierce through the neck of the crabworm. It only pierced halfway through its neck. Bei Su did not panic because he had never thought that the stone awl would be able to pierce through the neck of the crabworm. Now that the stone awl had pierced halfway through the neck of the crabworm, Bei Su had already reached his expectations. After the attack, Bei Su immediately turned around and used his fastest speed to escape into the pile of broken rocks. Then, he picked up the stone board that he had prepared earlier and placed it at the entrance of the pile of broken rocks. At that moment, the crabworm, which had recovered from the sudden attack, suddenly opened its back plate and flapped its large insect wings. Hearing the sound of the crabworm's wings, Bei Su calmed down. When the crabworm lifted its back plate, the front part of the back plate would cover the head of the crabworm. This kind of body structure was to protect the head of the crabworm while it was flying. However, this flipped back plate would also push the stone awl that Bei Su had pierced into the neck of the crabworm deeper. Because the crabworm had just eaten a large amount of ground moss, the ground moss would absorb the minerals underground during its growth, so it was very heavy. Even if the crabworm flapped its wings, it would still not be able to fly fast. After the crabworm left the ground, the stone awl had completely pierced through its neck and was stuck in its carapace. Although the crabworm's reaction was very slow, it could still clearly see that Bei Su was attacking it. Like a small cannonball, it flew towards Bei Su's hiding place. When the crabworm hit the stone board, Bei Su, who was behind the stone board, felt his internal organs tremble. His arms went numb and a fishy taste gushed out of his throat. However, Bei Su did not let go of the stone board in his hand and held it firmly. The sounds of insects chirping, crashing, and Bei Su's muffled groans rang out one after another. Even after half an hour, when the crashing outside became very weak, Bei Su still did not dare to relax. After a long time, when there was no longer any movement outside, Bei Su took out a sharpened stone knife from his hiding place and walked out. The second one. End of this chapter. Chapter 786. It was already past noon, and the light on the surface had weakened. It was difficult for light to penetrate the underground world, and the underground world had also quietly become dark. Bei Su shook his trembling arms, and did not dare to stop as he began to clean up the dead crab worm. Bei Su first carefully used a stone knife to cut open the eyes of the crab worm, and took out 2 pieces of cartilage the size of jelly beans. These 2 pieces of cartilage were very special, and could actually emit a faint light in the gradually darkening world. Bei Su kept the 2 pieces of cartilage like they were treasures, and began to carefully separate the cartilage of the crab worm. After separating the cartilage, Bei Su cut off a pair of milky white wings inside the cartilage that were at least 2 meters long. After cutting off the wings, Bei Su immediately scraped the insect oil under the wings, and then cut off the 2 pieces of crystal-clear insect meat inside the insect oil. After doing this, Bei Su no longer continued to deal with the body of the crab worm. Most of the useful parts of the crab worm had been cut off, and the remaining parts would touch the internal organs of the crab worm if he were to cut it again. The reason why the crab worm could digest hard minerals like moss was because the digestive fluid in its body was extremely acidic. This acidic substance was extremely harmful to Bei Su. Even if Bei Su did not come into contact with the acidic digestive fluid, the stone knife would immediately be corroded by the acid. This stone knife had been sharpened by Bei Su for almost 3 days, and Bei Su did not want to easily destroy the stone knife in his hand. Bei Su carefully separated the parts from the crab worm and placed them in the pile of rocks that he built, leaving only a portion of the insect oil. He then carefully placed it on the stone slab. Next, Bei Su untied the linen cloth on his leg, took off the rock splint that stopped the bleeding, and applied the insect oil of the crab worm on his leg. Bei Su sighed. With this insect oil, although this leg will need some time to heal, it will not become infected and fester. After wrapping up the wound, Bei Su used all his strength to drag the remaining cartilage of the crab worm to the underground river 1,000 meters away. He then pushed the carcass of the crab worm into the underground river. Looking at the pitch-black environment, Bei Su hurriedly groped his way back to his little nest, pushed the stone slab aside, and crawled in. Bei Su closed the stone slab and piled a pile of gravel on the inside of the stone slab. Then, he took the crab worm's wings and sat on it. With the glimmer of the cartilage, Bei Su cut off a few pieces of worm meat with a sharp stone knife. Bei Su did not gobble down the worm meat, but stopped when he felt that it was barely enough to fill his stomach. Bei Su cut the rest of the worm meat into thin slices and spread them on the rock. He was going to dry the worm meat and store it for later consumption. Under the glimmer of light, Bei Su, who was so sleepy that he couldn't even think clearly, forced himself to endure for a long time. Only then did he lay down on the new bed made from the wings of the crab worm and fell into a deep slumber. The corners of the sleeping Bei Su's mouth rose slightly under the faint light, as if he was looking forward to something in his dream. At this time, far away in the Azure Federation, Lin gently raised her head and looked at the bright and colorful world in front of her. In these 6 days, Lin put down the touching book that she loved so much and endlessly looked at this world that she had imagined countless times. Even though she couldn't see it clearly, Lin still couldn't get enough of it. At this time, Lin only saw a figure walking in front of her. Lin lightly twitched the tip of her nose. Before the figure in front of her could speak, Lin softly asked, "Mom, why did you come back so early today? Mom, why did you come back so early today? It's not time for afternoon tea yet." Beside Lin was a middle-aged woman in an azure blue dress that was full of charm and elegance. The middle-aged woman stretched out her hand and gently touched Lin's face. Her expression was full of love, as if she was touching a fragile treasure. Then, the middle-aged woman waved her hand and two furry little beasts appeared in her arms. These two little beasts were very lively and curiously looked around. They even let out a baby sound from time to time. The middle-aged woman asked Lin. Lin, how are your eyes these past few days? Lin's tranquil face bloomed with a bright smile as if she was happy that she could see this world. Mom, I can still only see the color and shape of the light now. But after tomorrow, I will be able to see everything clearly. The middle-aged woman looked at Lin with some heartache and only thought that Lin's words were to tell her not to worry too much. In the middle-aged woman's heart, Lin was already very satisfied that she could see the color and shape of the light now. At the same time, the middle-aged woman started to blame herself again. If she had been more careful back then, she wouldn't have been plotted against. As a result, Lin didn't have time to see the world clearly when she was just born, and she lost the light. Lin, these are two fays. One is your father's family heirloom, the spirit speech white lion, and the other is your mother's family heirloom, the azure cloud leopard. The spirit speech white lion and the azure cloud leopard are both compatible with your willpower runes. Why don't you contract them, Lin? That way, apart from Dad, Mom, Uncle Butler, and Cece, you will also have two companions to accompany you. After hearing her mother's words, Lin didn't immediately reach out to take the spirit speech white lion and the azure cloud leopard. Instead, she asked in surprise, the spirit speech white lion and the azure cloud leopard, aren't they? Before Lin could ask, she heard her mother's gentle voice. Previously, when you couldn't see this world, your father and I discussed to create the simplest and most peaceful environment for you. Therefore, we didn't tell you about our family's matters. Lin, since you can vaguely see this world now, it is also good to contract two fays to protect you. Lin's usually clear-headed mind felt a little dizzy at this moment. Her mother had just said that the spirit speech white lion was her father's family heirloom, while the azure cloud leopard was her mother's family heirloom. Lin had touched these two fays many times when she had touched the Azure Continent's chronicles. As one of the three major federations, the Azure Continent had vast territories and developed commerce. Among the Azure Continent's major aristocratic families, they all had symbolic family heirlooms that showed their status. Among the aristocratic families, there was an extremely strict classification from 1 star to 5 star, just like Creation Masters. The spirit speech white lion was the symbolic fae of the class 4 family. The azure cloud leopard was the symbolic fae of the class 5 Guan family. There were a total of 8 class 5 factions in the Azure Continent, and each of these 8 major family symbolic fays were named Azure. Lin had always known that her father's surname was and her mother's surname was Guan. However, she didn't expect that her birth would be so illustrious. Chapter 3 Sad face. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.